All right, I call to order the May 11th, 2020 Houston County Board of Public Education meeting. Would all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Seated. All right, welcome everyone to the meeting today. It's a little bit different than we've done in the past. And so hopefully this goes as smooth as possible. The first thing we've got up is the agenda approval. I'll accept a motion for the agenda.
I move we approve the agenda as presented. This is Amy Lynn Holt.
Do I have a second?
That case, second.
All those in favor? Mr. Egoff, do you approve?
I approve.
Oh.
Jay.
Mr. Apsher?
Yes.
Mr. Wood?
Yes.
Ms. Corn?
Yes.
I approve as well. The agenda passes. Next up is going to be board chair observations. Blair Craven, board chair. I've got a few observations, and my first observation is just this has been an extremely hectic time for all of us, and clearly the way that we're doing this meeting is different than we've ever done before. I truly appreciate our technology team for pulling this together to make sure that we can have this stream live, and so folks can hear this and see this from their homes. My next, I really want to thank our teachers. Our teachers have put in a tremendous amount of work and effort into getting our Learn from Home model up and off the ground. It's been a challenge, to say the least, to get all the Chromebooks out, get the material sent off, and our teachers deserve all of the applause for just making that work. And the last thing I have is for the folks that you can't see here, but to our admin team, especially Dr. King. Really, you put together a Learn from Home model within 3 days. I know some school systems didn't do it for weeks on end, and that just shows you the quality of folks that we have here. I truly want to thank you. All of you guys have done a tremendous job, and Superintendent Caldwell, Dr. Bryant, Mr. Rhodes, my hats are off to you guys. This has been a crazy year and a crazy 2 months. And I really, really, really appreciate it. All the work that you guys put in. All right, I'll now take board member observations.
This is Ms. Corn, and I just want to reiterate and ditto what Mr. Craven has said. I have talked to folks from other counties all over the state, and I don't hear any story that doesn't make me very, very proud of our teachers, our staff, our leadership team, putting together what they did in a very short amount of time and keeping up with the communication. It's just been really above and beyond the call of duty, really. Y'all have done a great job in a really tough time for everybody, the kids, the parents, as well as our teachers. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Corn. Ms. Case.
I would add our cafeteria staffs.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. On top of what you've said about our teachers, our cafeteria staffs, our bus drivers, our community, our parents. I mean, it's been a community effort. Everybody's been so gracious in this pandemic. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Coach Wood.
I concur with all three that have spoken so far, and just very proud of our school system. On a different note, I would like to mention a kind of a sad thing that was in the newspaper, Times News, recently, that Patrick Sullivan, the photographer for the longtime photographer for the Times News, who is really a friend of education in Henderson County, was I guess, let go in their downsizing and whatever. And it's really a loss. He's so involved, and you see him at a lot of our activities, sporting events, taking pictures. And what you might not know, he is also a volunteer with the robotics team in the county, been real active in that. So we're going to miss him. I just wanted to compliment him on his work.
Thank you, Coach Wood. Mr. Egoff.
Yes, I just want to say, repeat what everybody else has said about everybody's doing a great job. I'm also a fan of transparency, and I know our meetings are not normally streamed, but if there was a need and we wanted to do that, and the public wanted to do that, I mean, I would be fine with obviously making. I want everybody to know what we're talking about, and I don't want to feel like we're talking about things that shouldn't be out in the open, and so I'm a fan of streaming, but I know technology is limited, but if there's ever a need for that, I'd be A-okay with that.
Thank you. Mr. Absher, anything to add?
Yeah, I'd like to add, I think I'll pull a quote from Bo a couple of years ago when we were honoring Teacher Appreciation Week. You know, instead of it just being teacher appreciation, this is staff appreciation all the way from the bottom to the top during this time. Everybody's pulled together. I really appreciate everybody bending over backwards to make sure we've taken care of everybody. And also, I know we're going to talk about it a little bit later anyway, too, is I just publicly want to say that all of us, I can think we can, is that seniors, this is a very extremely hard time. We don't take light of anything that's been discussed, but we also have to do as much as we can. And I applaud the administration coming up with unique ways to honor seniors during this time. And hopefully we can figure something else out too.
Thank you, Mr. Absher. Ms. Holt?
So my observation is both from a board member and as a parent of multiple children. I have just been beyond overwhelmed with what my children are doing. I'm not a teacher. I don't ever want to do this again. I'm getting no pay for it. But the teachers have just been amazing. I will never forget the first Google meeting that my daughter that's 7, she's in 2nd grade, had with her teacher. And when we got on the link, her teacher, it's going to make me cry, but her teacher was crying, you know, Leah Faith, I miss you. She didn't even want to talk about school. She was like, where are your Barbies? Can you take your Chromebook up and show me your Barbies in your playroom? I mean, it was just so, my little girl just misses her teacher so much. And that every day she's getting to meet with her EC teacher, and she's getting extra help doing that. And then my high schooler, I mean, they're hammering out some work. It's not like he's skating and not doing anything, but they've been, like I emailed some of his teachers late on Friday, and then I got an email back Saturday from Mr. Chacon, like, if you want to talk to me over the weekend, this is my number, call me. You don't have to wait till Monday. You know, our system-wide, they've just been amazing. And I'm just so proud of what our system did in just a couple of days. And it wasn't weeks and weeks. And the most important thing is us feeding those kiddos. And it is just, it's amazing when we get that update every day and we see 6,800 meals were delivered and all the places we're going. And it is just, I'm just so proud of our staff. They are working so hard. So it's kudos.
Thank you. Next up on the agenda is going to be public input for our 2020-2021 proposed budget. We did not receive any comments for that. So we're going to move on to the next phase, which is public comments. We have 4 public comments that are going to be read by various board members. And I believe the first one's going to be read by Ms. Korn.
Okay, this is has been received May the 5th, 2020, and it is from Lauren Wilkie. My name is Lauren Wilkie, and I'm graduating from East Henderson High School this year. I've spent my entire school life in Henderson County Public Schools, and this school system is extremely important to me. One of the constants in my life was always school, whether it was East Henderson High, Flat Rock Middle, or Dana Elementary. It was a stable part of my life, and I loved it from the very beginning. As a child and now an adult, I always loved school, and I loved doing well in school. From a young age, putting effort into my education was my coping mechanism for managing everything that went on in my home life, and I always knew that I was working toward a finish line, quote, graduation. Like many other students, I was looking forward to enjoying my senior year. Most importantly, I was looking forward to graduation, to the Top Scholars Luncheon, to my senior night, to my final season of competitive dance, and to many other memories. However, that optimism was shattered when my grandfather passed away the August before I started my senior year. My grandfather, who I called Pops, and I were extremely close. His death took a toll on me in an unimaginable way. My senior year was very difficult to get through, though there were many times I wanted to stop, but I remembered the end goal of being able to walk across the stage in June. Unfortunately, the goal I had been working toward for 13 years has suddenly been ripped from my hands by the COVID-19 pandemic. However, that is just my story. In comparison to my peers, I would consider myself lucky. I have classmates who have dealt with the death of a parent. I have classmates who became parents. I have classmates who suffered through addiction. I have classmates who experienced homelessness. I have classmates who have been abused, whether it was sexually, verbally, mentally, or physically. I have classmates who have lived through poverty. I have classmates who have suffered from mental health conditions. And I have classmates who even attempted to take their own life. But we are all here today, and my fellow classmates and I did not allow adversities to stand in our way. For all students, walking across the stage marks a significant accomplishment and is a moment that they will remember for the rest of their life. For some, graduating from high school may be one of the biggest accomplishments they hold. For some, it may be more than a high school diploma. It may be a defeat of a personal obstacle that could have easily overtaken them. Each student has faced their own personal hardships throughout their life and was able to overcome them knowing that there was an end in sight and a moment to be celebrated for everything they have worked for. Each found the strength to keep going when they were on the verge of giving up. I'm reaching out to you, Henderson County, to reconsider graduation plans for the class of 2020. For all students, this change of plans is understating their accomplishments that they have arrived to achieve for 13 years. And to many, it feels that no one seems to care and that the county is failing to take into consideration that students do need recognition because the recognition they deserve goes beyond a simple diploma. While I understand we cannot hold a formal graduation ceremony until the COVID-19 orders are lifted, the class of 2020 would prefer that Henderson County consider holding a postponed ceremony rather than foregoing graduation altogether. The North Carolina School of Science and Math, as well as several UNC system universities, have postponed their commencement ceremonies rather than canceling them. For example, UNC Asheville is holding a full commencement ceremony this August to honor their spring 2020 graduates. If true traditional, in quotes, graduation cannot be held, we would rather just adjust traditional graduation than have it taken away. Some ideal alternatives could be to limit the number of guests for each graduate. Rather than have each graduate having 10 guests, each graduate may only be permitted to have 2 guests. Another alternative, although not ideal, would be to have each high school divide their graduation class into groups and have smaller ceremonies. My fellow classmates and I have worked immensely hard in our public school career. To not be honored with a formal graduation ceremony feels as if our accomplishments from the past 13 years have no value. High school graduation is a huge milestone in every student's life, and just like previous and future graduating classes, the class of 2020 deserves nothing less. Sincerely, Lauren Wilkie.
Thank you, Ms. Korn, for reading Ms. Wilkie's comments. I think next up we have Mr. Wood.
This public comment is from Angie Wilson. It was received last evening, May 10th. To the esteemed members of the board, I'm writing on behalf of my daughter and other seniors of our county. I'm asking you to consider another plan for graduation, even if it means postponing graduation until social distancing guidelines are relaxed. To quote one of the seniors driving through the parking lot to pick up his or her diploma as if going through a fast food window, I believe our seniors deserve a chance to walk the stage with their friends. Many of these young people have been in classes together since kindergarten. Unfortunately, due to no one's fault, their senior year and all that goes along with it has been lost. Empty yearbooks will be what they have to remember this year with. if we can give them a chance to walk the stage for graduation with their peers and classmates, with their teachers there to cheer them on, I feel we should do our best to make it happen. Even if graduation is limited to 2 tickets per family and everyone spread out on both sides of the football field, I feel it would mean more to the students. I'm asking you to consider any other possibilities for the class of 2020. I know these are difficult times for everyone, but high school graduation is a once-in-a-lifetime moment. Thank you for taking the time to hear my thoughts. Kindest regards, Angela Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Thank you, Angela Wilson. Next up, we have Ms. Case.
This is from Heather Lance, and it was sent in Sunday, May 10th. Dear Henderson County Board of Education, on behalf of the class of 2020 students and parents, I ask that you reconsider graduation plans for the county. These seniors have had so much taken away from them, and they deserve to be recognized and to have the opportunity to walk across the stage to receive their diploma. I am aware of the current limitations set by our governor. Perhaps you could reach out to him to ask for special consideration for graduation like South Carolina schools have done. Below are some options I would like for you to consider. 1, have a normal graduation while distributing a number of tickets to each student. Ceremony would be held on the football field while using social distancing as much as possible. Use both the home and the visitor side of the bleachers and perhaps space on the field to help with social distancing. Stage could be set up in the end zone with the graduates sitting further apart from each other. 2, allow students only to have a graduation ceremony while streaming live for parents and families to watch from home. 3, have a graduation from the parking lots at school. Graduates could line up 6 feet and families could sit in their cars to cheer on their graduate. I can see this with big screens set up in the parking lots for viewing. 4, postpone the graduation until July 1st or later. 5, if a virtual graduation is a must, have each school make appointments for the graduate and a friend of their choosing and immediate families. Film them walking across the stage, accepting their diplomas while the students are there to watch and support them. Have the friends turn each other's tassels once they receive their diploma. Then put all the videos together to make a live graduation to share on graduation night. Still allow the drive-through graduation before the virtual graduation is streamed. I would also ask that you have each school take a survey from the senior students and parents to get a good feel of what the students and parents want. I have seen each of these options talked about in surrounding communities, and each of these would be better than the current option. I am happy to speak with you regarding these options. High school graduation is an important milestone that should not be overlooked. Please do all you can to properly recognize each of the seniors of Henderson County. Thank you, Heather Lance.
All right, thank you, Ms. Case, and thank you, Heather Lance. We have one more, going to be read by Ms. Holt.
Okay, this was received Monday, May 11th at 8:04 a.m. There is no last name. The first name is Karen. I really hate that COVID-19 has taken so much away from our seniors. I understand safety is very important, and I agree. But with that being said, they have had everything taken from them. Time with friends that they may never see again, their last prom together. But most of all, graduation. For 13 years, this has been the goal, to work harder, to set their sight on their future. They deserve to walk across the stage to receive accreditation they have worked so hard for. Even if parents can't be there, they can be 6 feet apart and walk together as the class of 2020. Cap and gowns worn proudly with their classmates. This can be taped for parents to watch. They have had so much taken from them already that they need closure. A drive-through is cold and non-meaningful for all the years of hard work. They deserve more. Please reconsider this at even a later date to see the effects of opening the states back up to some sort of normalcy.
Thank you, Ms. Holt, and thank you, Karen. All right, next up on the agenda is going to be approval of the consent agenda. I will accept a motion for the consent agenda.
This is Ms. Corn. I move we approve the consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
Second, Amy Lynn Holt.
Great. Mr. Egolf, approve or don't approve of the consent agenda?
Yes.
Mr. Absher? Yes. Mr. Wood?
Yes,
Ms. Case?
Yes.
And Ms. Craven, yes. Agenda is approved. We have no old business today, so on to new business. A, that looks like Dr. John Bryant. Come on down, sir. I feel like kind of is Price of
I had
Right.
always hoped to be on the price.
Yeah.
It is the Price is Right or wrong.
I don't have a wheel for you. I'm sorry.
Do you want me to guess on the price of the stapler? Is that
Yes,
what you'd like me to
please.
do? My pleasure. Thank you, Mr. Craven and members of the board. I bring to you some information as it relates to the Institute of Transportation Research and Education. Specifically, let me give you a little bit of a backstory. Mr. Caldwell had reached out to the Institute in July of last year, especially as we were working on our capital planning and our programming. You know, this board had supported a 10-year facility assessment and projection based on our schools and our facilities, but we also recognize that our community itself is changing, whether it be housing developments, road infrastructure, land use studies, and otherwise. And so the Institute of Transportation Research and Education provides a service by which they analyze the land use in your community, the development in your community, capacities at your school, how your school system is districted, how it might be redistricted, and all of the above. And essentially what they do is they outline for you kind of a 10-year look ahead based on all the information that's available to them currently and then moving forward. And then they give the board that information in a formal proposal where they are at least able to consider, here's what you might see in your future based on this community. We recognize that this is a critical step in terms of our capital planning and our community planning. You know, we have some communities where our schools are at capacity, and additional development in those areas might considerably restrict that. We have other areas where we might be anticipating growth or a reduction and moving forward. And so what we bring to you is the desire to engage with this institute in order that they would conduct this study in the fall. The proposal is $30,000. And then ultimately, as you see there stated, you will receive the summary results and findings in a formal presentation to this board based on the information that's there. The attachment gives you a technical assessment. It sort of outlines for you what all the different elements are of that, what consists in that study. But what it really is intended to do is to give us some information to the best of our ability to look at what our current community trends are, our school capacities are, our enrollments, how we're serving those communities, and how that might look in the future. Okay? With that in mind, I'll be glad to answer any questions. Mr. Caldwell, anything you'd add to that based on that presentation? Okay. Any questions about the proposal? This would be out of our current capital budget.
For
If you-
this year?
Yes, ma'am, that's
what I was
correct.
just gonna
You would
ask.
not be approving this for next year based on a revised capital budget and project prices that have come in under. We would actually be, if you approve this contract, that $30,000 is in this year's capital and would be executed so that they could start in July and then finish up in the in fall.
This is Blair Craven. I think it's really important that we do this, especially with all potentially new developments coming.
Yes, sir.
From various parts of the county. You know, we did a facility study to look at our facilities, but we really need a more in-depth study of where our kids going to come from, where do we need to put the money into new facilities or redoing facilities, or you brought up that R word, redistricting,
Yes, sir.
in case that.
My
that-
apologies for using profanity
I
at the
appreciate
meeting.
that.
Yes.
In case that has to be an option somewhere down the road. And so I think you don't know what you need until you kind of you do a study on it, kind of figure out exactly what we need to do. So I'm all on board. Anybody have questions?
This is
Yes, Mr.
Jay
Goff.
Golf. I'm
Sir.
sorry, did you say this has been done before or has not
In
ever?
our school system, not to my knowledge. I don't know that we've used this particular organization. This is a contact that Mr. Caldwell had. This organization is affiliated with NC State. They are one of the most reputable for doing this work in the state of North Carolina. And so reaching out to them, we recognize that they sort of had the expertise and the experience working with other school systems to serve in that way. But again, to my knowledge, I don't know that we've done that here.
I called two other superintendents that's used this firm, and both of them are very pleased in the knowledge that they've presented to their school boards to make decisions. One superintendent was having to close a school just due to lack of enrollment at one of their schools. And how do you use the term redistrict, and what do you do and where do you draw the lines? And where's the birth rates and some of those things coming? So I think for us, with the planning that we have, and looking at Henderson County with the changes and that's happening around us on a daily and monthly term here with people and moving in and land availability, as Dr. Bryant said, I just think it's a great thing for us to go ahead and start planning. When you have a plan you can work from versus just making brash, quick decisions, and you really don't know, not having all the pieces. This brings all the pieces together, put the puzzle together, in my opinion.
I think it's a good use of the money to do this type planning. I think it would really help the school board, and we'd make decisions going forward.
Amy Lynn Holt, what did we not do? Do you recall off the top of your head this year? Did you say we had things that came in under budget?
Yes, ma'am. We had
Okay.
some roofing work that actually came in under. A
Okay.
couple of projects we acquired some savings. So we didn't eliminate anything from capital. We just simply saved.
Okay.
So we felt like this was a good repurposing of those dollars.
Perfect. Yeah, I agree. I think this is a very smart thing to do. I mean, that's the one thing I've heard since I moved to Henderson County is, years and years ago, the county never planned on what they were going to do, and things are always done afterward, and this, may have been like 50 years ago, but I remember keep hearing that. And the more I've gotten involved in local government, everybody seems to have a 10-year plan, a 20-year plan now. And I agree. We definitely need to jump on board with this.
Great. Well, I'll take a motion when someone's ready.
I'm Amy Lynn Holt. I move that the Henderson County Board of Public Education approve the ITRE contract to conduct an IPSAC study as presented.
Do I have a second?
Ru-
Second.
All right, Mr. Egoff, yes or no?
Yes.
Mr. Wood?
Yes.
Ms. Corn?
Yes.
Ms. Case?
Yes.
And I approve as well. Thank you very much, Dr. Bryant.
Thank you, Mr. Craven. The second item, B, that I have for you is a lunch price increase. I'll briefly touch on, this was actually intended to come to you in March. As you may remember, the world sort of flipped on its head in March. And so we eliminated this from the March meeting. We did not meet, of course, in April, and now we're coming together here in May. But in short, what we're looking at is a recommended 10-cent increase for elementary and secondary lunch prices. Those are full pay lunch prices, if you will. They would be increased from $2.40 to $2.50, and then $2.65 to $2.75, respectively. As you might imagine, one of the things that we take a look at is we look at what the meal prices are in Western North Carolina, kind of what's happening in our other school systems. This 10-cent increase would bring us in line with Transylvania County schools. It would bring us 10 cents closer to what's being charged in Buncombe County schools. They have been increasing theirs. And then the secondary school mega meal lunch prices would be increased by 15 cents from $3.10 to $3.25. And again, one of the things that we're trying to do here is track our operational costs, our food expenses, our personnel costs, the increases, as you know, to retirement, insurance, and otherwise that are not controllable by our child nutrition department. They simply have to pay what those are. This would recoup in a normal, and Mr. Rolfe wanted me to emphasize, in a normal school year, these increases would recoup about $40,000 toward our operational balance, because this board has certainly directed us to make sure that our enterprise programs operate at revenue neutral, much like we've talked about with our other programs. The key element here, and I do want to emphasize this from my perspective when it comes to student advocacy, we're talking about regular meal prices. This does not change the cost for a reduced lunch, still 40 cents. It does not change the cost, of course, for someone who qualifies for a free lunch. This 10-cent increase on total is for students whose families pay the full meal price for child nutrition services. So with that in mind, Mr. Craven, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Mr. Wood, what about teacher meal prices?
This would not affect teacher meal prices, to my knowledge, sir.
J.E. Golf, when was the last full meal increase?
It's my understanding the last time we increased was 4 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. Twice we have, the board has elected not to do so because the child nutrition program was in a revenue position that was allowing it to draw in more in reimbursements than it was expending. But I believe it would be 4 years ago since we've last increased. Yes, sir.
Amy Lynn Holt, and am I correct in stating that we did it a couple of years in a row and we had to
Yes,
do
ma'am.
it to receive our free and reduced prices? We had to bring our regular ones up, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? All right, I will accept the motion if somebody's ready.
I move that we approve this meal price increase for the 2021 school year as presented.
Do I have a second?
Rick Wood, second.
All right, Ms. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Egoff?
Yes.
Mr. Absher?
Yes.
Ms. Holt?
Yes.
And I approve as well. Thank you very much. It passes.
Thank you, Mr. Craven. New business item C deals with inter-unit student transfer agreements. The board may be familiar. This is something that we bring to you on an annual basis. We have two agreement areas, one with Polk County in the Saluda section, which allows students to attend Henderson County Public Schools from that area, and then one with Rutherford County from the Bat Cave and Lake Lure section. This is, again, brought to you on an annual basis for your approval. Just to give you a little bit of context, we currently have 21 students from the Polk County Saluda section who attend Henderson County Public Schools right now on these agreements. And we have 6 students from the Rutherford County, that Bat Cave, Lake Lure area, who attend Henderson County Public Schools with us
How many?
on a current
6.
basis.
6 kids?
6 kids, yes, sir.
Do you, Amy Lynn Holt, do you know how many we have going out?
No, ma'am, I do not.
Okay.
Because they don't have to report that to us. You may
Ah.
remember when we talked about this last time, our Power School allows us to track the number of kids who ask for an acceptance based on this agreement.
Uh-huh.
But because they're not required necessarily to fill out the release by the receiving school system, they don't necessarily report that data straight to us.
This, Ms. Corn, has the verbiage changed significantly in these agreements or
No, ma'am.
at all?
They are the same as you saw and approved last year.
Thank you.
And how much, Ms. Case, how much do they pay?
It's free. So essentially
Okay,
what they're
just have
allowed
to
to do is to
ask.
attend, we essentially say because of where you're located geographically, you can either attend Polk County schools or Henderson County Public Schools, even though you live in Polk County, and at no tuition cost. Glad to answer any other questions.
Anybody else? All right, I'll take a motion.
Right, sure. I move that the agreements for transfers, Polk County, Saluda section, and Rutherford, Bat Cave, Lake Lure section.
Do I have a second?
Case, second.
All right, and yes, Ms. Holt has a question.
So what does that mean for buses? If they want to ride the bus, do the parents drive them like to the line or, whatever?
Yes, ma'am. We have a community pickup stop in
Okay.
both the areas. And so
Okay.
they get them to that community stop area and then we pick and drop off from there.
Okay.
And they just coordinate with our transportation department based on our school calendars.
Okay, perfect.
This, Ms. Corn, is rather enlightening. I had to drive a bus, substitute bus driver role one time down to the Bat Cave Lake Lure Community Center. And I just pulled that bus in that parking lot, not knowing what was going to happen. And there were just kids got out of cars. It seemed like just from all directions that got on that bus. So it works very well, I
That's
reckon.
neat.
Good
You
deal.
sure?
All right, we have a first and a second. Mr. Egoff, yes or no?
Yes.
Ms. Holt?
Yes.
Mr. Wood?
Yes.
And Ms. Corn?
Yes.
And I approve as well. Motion approved. Now we're going to move on to, thank you, Dr. King.
Thank you, Mr.
Dr. Bryant. We're going to move on to Dr. King.
You
Yeah. Not quite there yet, sir.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Hand sanitizer.
Right. Welcome. This is going to be the authorization to submit federal program applications.
Yes, sir. I just have one new business item for the board to consider today. This is an annual item, COVID or no COVID. Every spring, we come to you and ask you to consider allowing staff to write grants to receive federal funds. As you'll see on the letter that's attached there, these are funds that help us serve students, but also help us employ staff. to serve those students. And each spring, if you allow us to write this, we do a consolidated grant application to the state. It is an iterative process that goes back and forth for, I wish I could say weeks. Last year it was months. But I do know that there are many needs in our school system that would be unmet if we did not apply for these funds. I'd be happy to answer any questions about the request.
Probably one of the sillier ones that we have, that you have to request to write the grants.
Really?
Please write them, please.
Yes.
We could use all the grants that we can get. Does anybody have any questions? This is a pretty standard one that we do every year.
I have a question. Just see if you, the numbers last year, is it?
The pre-planning allocation, I don't have those numbers yet. Waiting to hear them. And the application, that's a good question. The application has not opened yet. In years past, it's typically come open around this time where we get a date that it's going to be open. Have not heard that date yet.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be super important to make sure that we're writing these grants this year.
Amen.
And in the future, and grants could look a lot different
Mm.
tomorrow than they looked
Mhm.
a couple of weeks ago. And so, yes, please write them. I'll take a motion whenever someone's ready.
J.E. Golf, I move that the Henderson County Board of Public Education grant staff the authorization to submit federal funding applications as outlined in the request.
Is there a second? Any other discussion? All right, Ms. Holt?
Yes.
Mr. Wood?
Yes.
Ms. Corn?
Yes.
Ms. Case?
Yes.
Yes for me as well. Thank you very much, Dr. King.
Thank you. That was short.
All right, next up, we have the 2021 county appropriation request. This is going to be Mr. Bernie Sosha. Come on down. Our CFO. How are you, sir?
Well, thanks. How are you guys?
Doing well.
Well, Mr. Sosha is going to go ahead and there's the county appropriation. Before we get started with your approval of this budget, I request for you to pull up the PowerPoint that was sent to you earlier. If you don't mind, Mr. Sosha, I would like for Dr. Bryant to come back down and to go over the capital outlay of a part of this budget. So, Bernie, if you don't mind, let Dr. Bryant take over first so he can explain this budget, and then you can get a final approval of the budget. I believe all of you received a copy through a PowerPoint. Did you not?
We did.
From Dr. Bryant?
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay. It will not be, yes.
It will not be on the slide, but I'll speak specifically to it. The information that I sent to you earlier today, if you have it as a point of reference, I believe it's page 7 on the slides, provide some alternative information for you all. After the discussion at the board budget workshop, what we did for the capital outlay slides was we prioritized the order of the funding that was directly allocated towards specific projects. Notably, first at the board's direction, $400,000 from the local appropriation request was noted at the top for our reentry plan as it relates to COVID-19 and as we move forward. And then we identified the projects moving forward, again, gave them a tier ranking in terms of their order of importance. There were 4 projects that remained at the bottom of that list. Those 4 projects were the 2 specific lighting and audio replacements, audio system replacements at East Henderson and West Henderson High School, and then the installation of lighting systems at North Henderson High School in their baseball and softball fields. They are highlighted in red. In short, to designate that this board is waiting to receive information from the Board of Commissioners about the status of the MRTS money, and that those projects would not move forward in any way, shape, or form until this board had greater clarity about that work. So hopefully that might happen as early as January, maybe sooner. But if they did not, slide 7 outlines for you alternative projects that the board can consider that would be those next most urgent requests. And one of the statements that Mr. Craven made was talking about making sure that we address those roofing needs, those annual maintenance needs, those things that otherwise would have been part of that work. So you'll see there's a roofing project that would be next up. The next project out of warranty is at West Henderson High School. It's the Y Hall roofing that needs to be replaced. You'll see projects there for air handler replacement at Apple Valley and North Henderson High School in their main office. We've talked about vehicles and the need for vehicles for our student services department, especially as we continue to expand in our community, caring and supporting for folks in that respect. So this board would be able to look at those alternative projects between now and when any final decisions were made and make determinations based on what was taken out of that list, what could be added back. So we wanted to provide that for you for consideration so that when you're considering the appropriation request from Mr. Sosha, the $1.9 million involves the 1.5 capital outlay plus 400,000 for the COVID reentry plan. And then we would hold those projects in red until we had a greater picture as to the MRTS money before we moved forward on them.
Thank you, Dr. Bryan. Is there any
Pleasure.
questions about the capital?
Yeah. John, if the lights or the sound goes down at East or West, we will immediately have to come up with the money to replace them, right, this year?
We would immediately come to you with the need to do so. Because again, by putting them on this capital project, that money would not be approved by this board unless you authorized us to do so. So we've indicated to you that need, but let's say, for example, those systems failed and we could not replace them, then you'd be hearing from me that we would like to authorize that need. Right now, the systems are running, but as I shared with you, they're running on their last legs. We don't have replacement parts, and we're not able to service them beyond just their current operation, but we'd be coming back to you if there was a problem that we couldn't fix. Yes, ma'am.
And Amy Lynn Holt, I have a statement, a question too, but I just want to make clear that it's not that we don't feel like these are important. These are very important. The arts are huge in our school, and my family has been involved in, every child has been involved in that. And baseball and softball is hugely important. It's just that we feel like we have some schools that they have safety needs. And if we're not spending that money to do that, that it's kind of painful to do something else that's, I don't, frivolous is the wrong word. It's not frivolous. These are needs. But if we could get by 1 year putting them off, then that would, and money could go towards upward making that safer, or rugby making that safer. I do have a question about, tell us about the security camera installation phase 1. Where is that? And is that not slided for our, specifically our safety money, or is like all that together?
It's all together now. So
Okay.
the entire kind of, if you look at the categories on that capital outlay sheet, kind of designates what category it's in. So safety and security are all part of the capital outlay as a whole.
Oh, okay, I
Yes,
see it
ma'am.
right there.
But the
Okay.
phase 1, that's a great question. The phase
Oh,
1 for
phase 2.
the security camera installation is system-wide. If you remember from the budget workshop, it's actually putting the infrastructure in so that we can start to install a fully integrated security camera system across our school system. So
Okay.
for example, many of our elementary schools have no security cameras at all.
Okay.
Right. And this would build the infrastructure that we could start adding them in the places. Our high schools and our middle schools have them, but they're outdated systems. They're kind of hodgepodge. They've all kind of bought, purchased equipment at different times. It doesn't all talk to each other. And one of the recognition pieces that we had, and Mr. Massington has been leading this work, under the superintendent's direction, is we need a system that works for everybody. And we need the most modern system available. And as I shared with you on Thursday, a fully functioning, fully encompassing system would be about $1 million if we did everywhere with every need. And so phase 1 that's listed on initial capital outlay puts the infrastructure, the backbone in place. Phase 2, which is listed under the alternates, would allow us to expand that system, across the system.
That's
Wanted
huge.
to be sure that we understand, or that I understand what, so the county has put on hold part of the money that had been appropriated for us to specifically make rugby's entrance and upwards entrance more safe and in that double entry that we have done in every other school. Because they have put a hold on that, we are saying by this, we're holding the 400,000, which we have designated reentry. And we're also holding a couple of more 100,000 for the East and the West, which would get us very close to being able to do the rugby project, since it is less expensive than the Upward project. However, we are counting on the county to be able to release that money that they're holding, because we think that things will turn around, albeit slowly. And we will be able to go ahead with these projects. But I do want it very clear that this is very dependent on the county and their temporary hold on this money. And we surely trust and hope that it will be possible for them to release that sometime within the coming year.
Yes, ma'am, most certainly. And as you've noted, the board could ultimately make decisions with that entire pot of held money
Yes.
based on the information that came to, the alternates that we've listed are just options. The board could decide that Upward project or the rugby project were a greater priority than even the things listed as an alternative, if that were necessary, and could certainly allocate the dollars accordingly.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Case?
That's what I was going to ask. What we talked about that in budget. What happened to the rugby that we thought we was going to come up with enough money? So I just wanted
Yes,
to be
ma'am.
sure it's still on the plot.
Ms. Ratcher, I've got a question. On the vehicle replacement, that's just for one?
That would be 2 right now. Yes, sir. Mhm.
And which area?
That would ultimately be at Dr. King's discretion in coordination with her staff.
So, anybody else have any comments?
I have one more, Amy Lynn Holt. So I just want it for people who did not see our budget workshop last week. This money that was 1.7 million from this year that's on
Held?
hold
Yes, ma'am.
is on
Mhm.
hold, and then it's 4.5 million,
4.67.
4.67 million for next year. That's kind of on hold from the county. It's not on hold just because they don't feel like our school system's important and they're not going to invest. This is all reaction from the COVID-19 and the fact that our economy has just stopped and there's no tax revenue that has come in for months. The general public can help us by spending money in our county so we get more tax money in. I have no doubts that this money will be reinstated as soon as the county can do it. So I just wanted to make that clear that it's not, that all of a sudden they said, well, we told you we'd give you this and now we can't. It's just reactionary because we're in the state that we're in right now.
And Ms. Holt, I would love to add, if you don't mind, to that it is also important to note, for everyone listening and everybody in this room, that all the projects that were under contract are proceeding forward right now, every one of them. And when I get to the construction update under superintendent's reports and I share with you, the Rugby and Flat Rock projects are full steam ahead because those are empty buildings
The
right
AC projects.
Yes, sir. That's correct. So when we talk about Rugby and Flat Rock, HVAC system replacements that this board went to those projects are moving forward, and we're moving forward ahead of schedule because of the current circumstances. So we really have tried to make lemonade out of lemons as it relates to this, because we've been able to move forward with some construction work and some school work that otherwise would have taken much longer to address. And so everything that was under contract has moved forward. Everything that did not yet have a contract has been paused.
So therefore, that clarifies that it's not all the 4.6 next year that will be basically held, because those are under contract. You've got to remember that money was going to be paid next year to those
Yes, sir.
contracts.
$1.6 million from each of those projects was in year 2 of the MRTS money. So the original approval was a 2-year approval from the Joint Facilities Committee. 1 million of it was allocated toward Rugby and Flat Rock in the current fiscal year. 1.6 million, the balance of those projects were allocated in year 2. And as Mr. Caldwell said, right now, those projects are full steam ahead.
Yeah, because again, Amy Lynn Holt, I just want the public to understand the commissioners have been amazing with us. We came with this huge plan, $150 million in capital expenses we had, and thought, we're never going to get that in 10 years. This is a crazy request. And they said, you know what, we can do that and we can give it to you in 4. So they've been very, very supportive. We're just on hold because of what's going on. I want to make sure people know that.
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
So, Mr. Absher, again, I've got a question. So, we're looking at, we got the alternatives, right? So if we're voting on this, are we going to vote on just to say pretty much we're going to hold that a little bit of money and then come back in July, or after the budget comes back to approve whether we're going to go with alternates or?
What do you mean? That we're holding the sound systems and the baseball field lightings?
Right. But then are we voting to go approve to the alternative schedule, or are we going to say, let's wait to decide whether we're going to go with the alternate schedule, or does that make sense?
What we're voting on is sending across the street to the Board of Commissioners $30,828,000. Now, the way that we break out that 1.9 million of capital outlay, safety enhancements, annual maintenance is up to us, right? But we are going to ask them for $30,828,000, and which is, as you can see, is about $3.5 million, 3.6 less than what we had last year.
But we're not sending them a list.
We're going
I
to
think
send
we
them the
should.
list. We typically show them what we have planned for, but as Steve White, County Manager Steve White said before, the bottom line's what matters.
We do,
right?
yeah.
Now, I think between this board is what are we going to do with that $1.9 million? And I think that's when we need to set our priorities and make sure that, it was a whole different ballgame last year. And we had a lot more funds to be able to put into different projects that we had. And then we have to decide if that lighting, those baseball field lights, those softball field lights are more important than the Y Hall roof replacement at West.
Are we going to do that today?
I think today what we're going after is just to approve the 30,828.
Well,
Right.
yes, sir. And as staff, again, I think that to clarify that question, this is based on the feedback from Thursday's meeting. As staff, we're not seeking direction on the alternatives
Okay.
today.
Yeah.
We're following up with what you asked us to do, is present us some alternatives. And so those are there. And when you had greater clarity about the MRTS money, then we could come back to that discussion. But we would not engage in any encumbrance of those projects or the funds that are in red until the board felt like there was a clearer picture of what that is.
And that's what I was just kind of wondering. So maybe over this list, maybe put on that list that we're also considering an alternate of rugby project. That makes sense. Or at least we show that we're trying to decide whether we want to use that in the red or use the alternatives or put it all into a pot to do rugby.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
We could send that to them. I don't think they really
I
care
don't
about
either.
it. I think that, like I said, they care about the bottom line, the bottom number. It's the number that matters right now. But we can certainly send to them that we're looking as an alternate to do rugby as well. Mr. Egoff?
Yeah, real quick, you mentioned, what'd you say, reentry?
Yes, sir.
Kind of like something coming into the atmosphere or something. But
That's what it feels like.
But I just want to make note
Yeah.
that we all know that we don't know what that's going to be.
Right.
We don't know what the government, what the governor, what the states. We don't have any clue what anybody's going to want to have or to see when their children come back to school. So that's just the number that we have. Could be
So-
more, could be less, but we just don't know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that 400,000 is a placeholder for the unknowns, which there are going to be many. I think it's important that we have that. But if we get to
Absolutely.
if we get to January and we get to the point where we're not going to get any of the monies that were appropriated for 1920 for rugby and upward, and this board's going to have to make some decisions. What do we do with those monies? Do we, my main concerns are we've got to make sure that the buildings are watertight.
Oh,
We
yeah.
have to make sure that there's hot water in the building.
Well, if you don't
Gotta make
spend the
sure that
money
there's-
now, it can be triple down the road.
It could be.
Maintenance for maintenance.
And we've got to make sure that our, when I came onto this board, soon thereafter, there was a tragedy on I think it was February 14th, and we've made it a priority to really make our kids as safe as we possibly
Yep.
can. And we've done that with hiring a Scott Massington and doing some other projects. And I think we're going to have to start tightening our belt. And you can see it from this budget. It's 3.6 lighter than it was last year. And they withheld 1.7 of that $34 million. Or it's on hold, or it's wherever. We've got to really make sure that we have a laser focus on what our goals are and make sure that we portray those to staff, give those to staff, and that we follow up on those. And for me, it's definitely the safety and the roof stuff.
Yep.
Yes, Ms. Gates.
Dr. Case, I don't think we need to back ourselves in a corner with giving all those alternatives and everything, though, because we've got, what, 8 down there or so? And so,
I think Mr. Caldwell said the same thing a while ago. If you send over 30,828 and that's what you send them, I think they'd be just fine.
Mhm.
They know how listen, they're not going to dig into the weeds on what all that is. I think a lot of times we give more information that's even required or necessary or whatever, but
not like we're hiding anything,
It's
but we
not,
just
no.
got decisions there.
absolutely.
that.
And they understand that. And I think, I wouldn't be opposed to just sending over the 30,828. Here's our number. This is what we need.
And I'm sure Mr. Caldwell, Ms. Corn, I'm sure Mr. Caldwell and Mr. Wyatt have had many discussions.
They have,
It's
yes.
not a secret out there. This is what we're doing and why we're doing it.
So this is Amy Lynn Holt. So can I ask a question about the musical instrument replacement? Because I know I have, for Dr. King, I have been in her ear for about 2 years for this. So I'm so excited that we are going to start replacing some of our school-owned musical instruments that are from some of them, like the 40s. It's horrendous. Just looking in the future, do you guys have kind of a feeling like, oh, we might need this $90,000 for 4 years or for 8 years or 2 years we'll take care of it?
What does it replace? Come on down. You're the next
King,
Can't
contestant.
speak to her, but I saw you were looking
Yeah,
at
Dr.
me.
next
King, come on.
contestant.
Well, if you know, go ahead.
Dr. King, come on down, please.
We like her a little more, but it's okay.
Those instruments can be very expensive.
Oh, some of them are
I
crazy.
mean,
I bought them.
and I'd like to know also, are these going to high schools? Do you have them appropriated for which high schools? So on and so forth?
Sure. Thank you for being interested in helping our students get some instruments. As you know, a lot of our students do buy or lease their own instruments, but we're talking about the school-owned instruments, typically instruments that will never fit on a school bus, a tuba, a cello, a bass, drum sets. I don't even
Horns.
know exactly what I'm
You know.
talking about, but you know what I'm talking about. And so I want to give a lot of kudos to our orchestra and band teachers who went into very detailed record keeping for me to tell me exactly which instruments they have in inventory and the operational condition. I learned a lot in that process working with them. I learned it's not necessarily the age of the instrument as much as it is the quality of the instrument. I know we have our school board attorney's a former band director. He could probably talk a whole lot more about that. But yes, we think the $90,000 will help us start getting where we need to be, but likely be something we have to bring back to you for a couple of years. With the $90,000, we created a budget that would look at a base budget for every middle school and high school. And so to take that $90,000 and allocate it out, we said every middle school would get at least $5,000 and every high school would get at least $10,000. And then we looked at enrollment in the band and
yeah.
strings programs and did a per pupil allotment on top of that to get up to the 90,000 so that the larger programs actually end up with more money based on the per pupil enrollment in the programs. We were looking at a $14.50 per capita for enrollment in middle school, and then in high school, looking at $16 per student in high school, since the high schools do cost a little bit more and have 4 grade levels there versus 3. And again, that total comes to right at $90,000, over $89,000.
So is that 5,000 for band, 5,000 for orchestra, 5,000 period?
No, ma'am, my math didn't work quite that well. It's an instrument purchase for band and strings combined. So the school would have to work together. And they now have very solid inventories of what's owned. So starting with those oldest and highest need instrument replacements. And as they said, they might want to use some of this. This would all be capital, so it would be instruments, but we are trying to help them also with things around repair as well.
Yeah, the question I would have is storage. I've been in high schools where the storage for these instruments leaves a great deal to be desired and might even contribute to the ill repair of them. So do they all have decent storage for these very expensive instruments, or is that part of what they could maybe spend a little on to make the storage? They got to have someplace to put it.
I will be honest, Ms. Corn, I did not address storage issues with
That's a
them.
topic I'm just throwing out you might
Certainly.
discuss, because, you know, your cabinet in the back of the auditorium, that's just not, so.
Certainly. I hear you.
I'm excited. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. We
And
appreciate that.
while we have you, the vehicle idea, anything? we're
Sure,
thinking
I'd be
on?
glad to speak to that. When we have several, now that we've added social workers, an expansion of that and replace some positions through attrition with social workers, we want to, as much as possible, use county-owned cars for transportation and to see students at their homes and that sort of thing. And so we would, I would work with Mr. Grudmeyer to make sure that those were used with student services staff on a checkout basis.
Any other questions for Dr. King? Thank you.
Now,
right,
now
I
I'd like
guess
to
we
ask
get
you,
Bernie.
Mr. Socia, yes.
Yep. Mr. Socia, come on down. You're the next contestant on this year's budget.
I think you guys have done a wonderful job so far. Well, I guess I will put it to you at this point. Do you have any other questions to have? The capital was the main piece that had changed since last Thursday. We can talk about that if there's anything on the other part that you want to talk about. I can also reiterate that what you said, Mr. Craven, you're approving the request to the county. We're not putting a list in our books for our budgets or anything like that at this time.
I think we beat up capital pretty good. I do think it'd be important for you to address what are we using the additional $600,000 on for this upcoming year.
Sure. We have the retirement and hospitalization has already been approved for next year, the increases, and that is going to be $325,000 for locally paid staff members. That's already was already approved in the current year for next year's budget, unless they were to come back and reduce that, which cannot.
They
see
approved that in a
happening.
mini bill, I'm guessing.
That was in
right?
one of the mini bills. Yeah, the one that would have had salary increases in it. The only part that went through was the fact that we were going to have benefit rate increases.
Okay.
We have an increase in there to our charter schools because as we are getting more local dollars, we share those with the charter schools and their enrollment has been increasing. So we have an increase in there for the charter schools. Our utility bills have been going up and we haven't really appropriated any more dollars for that. So there is a small chunk in there for that as well.
And then we have a new assistant principal that superintendent would like to add to Clear Creek.
Yes, well,
Elementary.
we'd like to add a new assistant principal. When I first came on board 4 years ago, we were one of the only few systems around that did not have assistant principals in some of our elementary schools, and we've been working on a plan, a small phasing plan to just take care of things each and every year, and this would wrap that plan up over 4 years. And so we're excited to add one assistant principal. Then we give all of our elementary principals at a certain size. Not all of our elementary principals have one, but we determined basically it's this size as a school that you need in an elementary principal. Also, and Mr. Fender is here, learn from home. I've heard so many remarks about how it's working but tremendous amount of energy through the technology department. And we now have over 7,000, if I'm looking for a nod, of computers that are basically out to students at this time. And we've got to hire another technician to take care of this, of our technology. We are going to look at the calendar here in a few minutes for next year. As far as some General Assembly, there are 5 remote days in that calendar, which means there's going to be continual technology that we're going to have to discuss, and we are just short a technician at this time. So those 2 are the only new items in this budget that we are requesting at this time.
All right, does anyone else have any questions, comments for Bernie regarding the 2021 county appropriation request?
And Mr. Socia, you have to have something over to the county by law by when?
By the 15th.
Well, then I guess we better make a motion then. I'll take a motion.
This is Ms. Corn. I move that we approve the 2021 county appropriation request.
Do I have a second?
Mr. Absher, second.
All right, Mr. Egoff, yes or no?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
Mr. Wood
Yes.
and Ms. Case?
Yes.
That's a yes for me as well. Thank you very much for all 3 of you guys. Appreciate it. Next on our list going to be Bernie again. Mr. Socia with the audit contract.
Audit contract is next. All right. Yes, we have the contract for Carlin and Anderson up for you to approve to audit the books for the 19-20 year that we are wrapping up next month, if we can believe that. It is for the same dollar amount that it was this past year and has been longer than I've been here. At $30,000.
This is a pretty standard one. We have to audit our books every year. And I think Carlin Anderson has done a phenomenal job. They are great folks over there, and for keeping the price the same for umpteen years is pretty amazing.
They have
This
been.
is a lot of work.
It is, and they're also very responsive to us throughout the year if we do have questions, especially in a time like this where we've had some concerns about how we're having to operate and want to make sure that we're being compliant and good stewards of everything. And we keep checking with them to make sure that they're on board with how we are operating. So
Absolutely.
Well, this is Jay Egoff. You know, they also work with the Henderson County Educational Foundation, Transylvania County School Systems. I mean, it's top notch.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff.
Yeah.
ABC boards, Hendersonville, Laurel Park. I mean, did a lot of good work.
I know they work with a lot of nonprofits in town, and they're it's money well spent. So without, if anybody else has any questions, comments, concerns, I'll go ahead and take the motion.
Jay Egoff, I move that the Henderson County Board of Public Education approve the contract to audit accounts between the Henderson County Board of Public Education and Carlin and Anderson Incorporated for the period beginning July 1, 2019 and ending June 30th, 2020.
Do I have a second?
Mr. Woods, second.
Any other comments or anything on this? No? All right, Mr. Absher, yes or no?
Yes.
Ms. Holt,
Yes.
Ms. Cord,
Yes.
and Ms. Case?
Yes.
It'll be a yes for me as well. Thank you very much, Mr. Socia.
you.
All right, you're up again for the trifecta. North Carolina lottery application.
Yes, sir.
Another one of those that I love.
Sure. What we have, the quarterly lottery application, this for $236,873.04, as was available at the time that the county signed the lottery application. This is the quarterly distribution of lottery funds that goes towards Hillendale, Mills River debt service for those school projects. The debt service is still ongoing.
Right. Yeah, we do this one every quarter. This is just to pay for the financing of the 2 elementary schools. How long do we have left on that? Do you know?
We are down to about a year and a half.
Year and a half. 6 more of these. All right.
We'll start on new.
Yeah, right. Then we'll do another one. Any questions on these? This is pretty standard, pretty easy. Nope. I'll take a motion when someone's ready.
I move that the Henderson County Board of Public Education approve the public school, am I on the right one?
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
Building Capital Fund, North Carolina Education Lottery application. That was
All right.
Amy Lynn Holt.
Do I have a second?
Mr. Absher, second.
Great. Any discussion? All All right, Mr. Egoff, yes or no?
Yes.
Mr. Wood?
Yes.
Ms. Corn?
Yes.
Ms. Case?
Yes.
It's a yes for me as well. Thank you very much, Bernie. Now we're on to, I believe, Dr. Bryan again. We have some policy updates from the North Carolina School Boards Association. COVID-19, I guess, policy updates. Welcome back.
Thank you, sir. Glad
sir.
to be back. I almost brought Dr. King with me this time. Just
Just so you get a few more
want to
compliments.
move up in the world, you know?
So cute.
I want to be somebody. The policy updates that you see in front of you here, there are 6 specific updates that we received from the North Carolina School Boards Association. 5 of them deal with updates to current policies. One is actually a brand new policy. And as you might imagine, the COVID-19 closure among North Carolina public schools has dramatically altered some of the language or the need to alter language in several of the policies that currently exist. It's March when we normally get spring updates, but as the General Assembly is taking a variety of action, the School Board Association, of course, is processing all of those changes as well. So we'll be continuing to come to you with new policies. But the first one is directly applicable to today. You'll see policy 2302, and it deals with remote participation in board meetings. Specifically, the elements are listed there under the summary of request. You'll see that it adds a need for individual board members to participate electronically, should there be a need, like quarantine, isolation, or a stay-at-home order. That's new language. It adds subsection A2 to the remote participation where an in-person attendance would violate a local or state emergency order. And then adds section D, regarding fully electronic meetings in the event of an emergency, such as what we've dealt with during the stay-at-home order. So this policy update essentially says we learned a lot about how schools and school systems have to operate, and we need to make sure that our policy matches that. And so those revisions come to us for your consideration and approval. I'll be glad to answer any
Yes, Ms.
questions
Case.
about 2302.
In A4,
Uh-huh.
what does that mean that no board member may participate remotely more than 2 times during a calendar year? What if we had to?
So specifically in this instance, it's talking about an individual board member not being present for that. And so that was previously in the policy. That hasn't changed. So as you remember, prior to the stay-at-home orders and otherwise, there were provisions in the policy that said there might be a circumstance by which you might need, or another board member might need, to participate remotely, but you can't do that frequently. That cannot become the habit, essentially, is what the policy states.
We might have added this one right before
Yeah,
you
it
and
was.
Mr. Egoff joined the board. And essentially, I think the wording around it is, let's say you're on vacation, and then you're on vacation, then you're on vacation, and you keep remoting in. I think it was less to do with times like these and more to do with just not participating. Right? Oh, sorry. Not participating in the actual board meetings.
However, it does give us an out, this is Ms. Corn, it does give us an
2/3,
out. I mean,
right.
if you have in long-term cancer treatments, but you're able to participate or some such,
Yes.
we could agree to waive it.
Yes.
Like I was hurt.
Like, yeah, you
Right.
go out and break a leg or something.
It was essentially meant you're elected, and then all of a sudden you don't come to any board meetings. You're just remoting in now. And so I believe that was the intent when we read over this thing however long ago
Yeah,
it was.
it was.
And when we started it, it was Lisa was sick and doing
Lisa was sick,
treatments
that's
and
right.
couldn't come in. And of course, so we just waived that.
All right, any other questions on this policy update? All right, next one, please.
Yes, sir. 4230 deals with communicable diseases. And again, this policy was very general prior to the most recent closure. And now there is some very explicit language. The most notable revisions to this policy that I would draw the board's attention to is being very direct about what our responsibilities are under FERPA. And when it comes to disclosures and the proper lines of communication for those disclosures, should someone suspect or learn that an individual, student, staff, or otherwise, they believe to be, currently, holding a communicable disease or otherwise. And so you'll see the language there. It broadens its focus beyond HIV, infection, and AIDS. It better distinguishes between the requirements for reportable communicable diseases and those that are not. It incorporates the FERPA considerations, especially the sharing between school officials. It incorporates the legally required procedures for students dealing with hepatitis B, adds a new section for these students, and then adds section G to address other control measures. The most critical pieces, I think, of this policy for the board to understand, because they are the questions that often come up when the school system is operating, is why we can't share somebody's personal health information, a staff member, a student, or even a family member. We don't have that right. And so people often press us to say, I heard about so-and-so and so-and-so. And this policy is very clear that we do not have the right to share that information unless we have been granted that right by the individual whose medical information it
What's
is.
that teacher's name that's positive with whatever?
That's exactly right. That teacher has to make that choice themselves.
Mhm.
Yes, sir. And so glad to answer any questions about 4230, should there be any from the board.
It's, kind of about this, but this is Amy Lynn Holt, but not really. It was brought to my attention by a teacher that, so if we call because student A has a fever of 102 and their parent comes to get them, we would expect or demand that they would be out the whole rest of that day, right? Because she was telling me that her student was like the parent would pick up the student, give the student ibuprofen, and then after lunch bring the student back again.
Normally the guidance, again, normal guidance from the health department and from our school nurses, who are the extension of that, are that you have to have been without fever for 24 hours.
That's what I
Without
thought.
any medicine.
Exactly, without
Without medicine.
anything
That's
controlling
That's what I
that.
thought. Okay.
24 hours.
So if I have a teacher question me about that, I would say to them like, hey, you probably want to check with your supervisor, but from what I understand, they've got to be fever-free.
Yes, ma'am. And again, our school
Yes.
nurses do a wonderful job of being the point of communication on that.
Okay.
And so I'd also direct them to make sure that they're in proper communication with their school nurse.
Okay.
Glad to answer any other questions, sir.
Any other questions about 4230? All right, going on to 5050 emergency closings.
Yes, sir. 5050 dealing with emergency closings really just sort of specifies the notice to the board, specifically making sure that the board is aware of these types of closures. And then
I think that's important.
it is. I would say that the board should be aware of in the event that the superintendent's going to close school.
Yeah.
And so it's a very wise thing. I know we're fortunate to have a superintendent that stays well connected to each of you and keeps you in the loop about what's going on. But I believe the policy recommendation is to ensure that that's happening everywhere in the state of North Carolina. But this language just sort of says before such a closure would exist or occur or be publicly announced, that the board would be informed of that.
Too bad we can't include and the governor and the state superintendent to notify us before they do that.
Any other comments, questions, 5050? All right, next up, 7503 teleworking.
Thank you, Mr. Craven. And I'm going to take just a moment with teleworking because I want to give you a little bit of broad context. Again, this is a new policy. It's a policy that did not exist. Working from home, teleworking was not really on the radar of public education in North Carolina before March the 16th. But now we have learned that much can be accomplished even remotely in our school system. And so this policy, if I were to summarize it in just a few sentences, it essentially says we may learn moving forward that we can still approve someone working remotely, that they can still do their job in unique situations. This policy gives the authority to the superintendent and principals to approve that. And then to report that to you as a board, where you ultimately have the discretion to decide whether or not to allow that to continue or to at any time cancel such an agreement. And I think that's a critical part of the way that this policy is written. It says moving forward, there may come a time when people can continue to work remotely. And there's some specific guidelines and expectations that are detailed in the policy that I won't read, but we'll be glad to answer questions. But it's critical to understand that what it outlines is that it requires the superintendent's approval, the supervisor's approval, an agreement in advance, and then the board maintains the ability to cancel such an agreement anytime they'd like. Okay. With that in mind, you'll see that there's specific language that I've highlighted for you there about the definitions of who's eligible and when and how. I'll specifically reference apart from the policy where it talks about, a classroom teacher's not eligible to telework except on a work day. So if it's an optional work day or a required work day, that's a time that they would be eligible to do so.
Do you see this, and maybe this is more for Dr. King, but do you see this happening for some of our PD days, some of our development days for some of our teachers being able to telework to do that, or no? Who knows?
I was going to say, our superintendent was shared with us a T-shirt idea that I think he had shared with you all at the board budget
don't know.
workshop. I don't know. I've already purchased my T-shirt. You can purchase yours too. I think what we have learned is in just this short period of time, there were lots of things we thought would never exist in public education that now do.
Right.
And this policy gives us the ability to be flexible the way we may need to be, because we don't know what it's going to look like in August. To go back to your point, we don't know what it's going to look like in December. And while we have very high expectations, what's been really exciting is to see that our staff have met those expectations even remotely. And that's made us, just continues to inspire us.
So, okay, go ahead.
Ms. Case.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
on the remote days, we're going to have to make those required work days.
Not necessarily. This policy doesn't dictate that part of it. You're speaking about the calendar law for
Yes.
next year.
Uh-huh.
That's kind of undecided at this point. We're drafting what that will look like moving forward, and we'll be talking more with you guys about what that is. What is explicit in the policy is that a classroom teacher can only telework, if you will, from the policy's perspective, on a required or an optional teacher workday.
Oh, that could be optional also.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Mr. Rapture with a comment. So basically, this policy could also set us up for winter weather and possibly doing the schooling from home during that time.
Well, it's telework policy, but I mean,
Potentially. Sure. Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Corn, in section D2, it says something about entering into some teleworking agreement. Is there some formal part of their contract or agreement that all teachers are now going to sign, or is that just a?
It's
Oh, there
referenced
is.
earlier in the policy, but essentially you have to have you have to draft an agreement ahead of time that has to then exist prior to the person's approval for doing so.
So this is something we're going to have to do before fall.
Yes, ma'am. We're going to have to determine who's an eligible group of employees. What does the agreement look like? Because again, when we approved work from home most recently, no such thing existed. Mr. Rhodes, who I'm going to give some credit to, created such a thing. We talk about what was accomplished in just 24 hours and 72 hours. Mr. Rhodes was one of the HR professionals that was leading not just our region, but our state. He was one of the people that people were calling to say, tell me what your work from home guidance looks like. In what way are you recording information? In what way are you making sure that people understand what those expectations are?
And they should always check with Henderson County to see who's doing
Yes,
it
ma'am.
right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it would require that such an approval could only exist once an agreement was in place.
Okay, and number 4 in that same section, it talks about a teleworker's alternative work location must be safe, secure, and free of undue distractions. All those.
Someone come get my kids.
Don't
Well,
come to my house.
I think that's pretty daggum ambiguous to start with, and it needs to be, but yet it is a little ridiculous. Says, although school officials will not conduct routine inspections, blah, blah, blah. So what's the deal with that? Seems,
Workers' comp.
Yeah, I was going to ask that.
Workers' comp,
I
okay.
took the words
Yeah.
out of my mouth. I think that's
This
a
is-
requirement.
Bocawa Superintendent, this is a new policy. So Dean, if you don't mind, can you speak to a couple of items since it is a new policy and not just addition to?
while you're
advice?
talking about it, you might as well go on and talk about 7 and 8, because also I just put ha beside each one. Monitored and assessed in the same manner. Anyway.
So, yeah, I'm happy to talk a little bit about this. Most workplaces that allow employees to work from home have in place a strict telework policy, as well as require an agreement with employees that telework either 100% or partially during their work week. That just sets out the expectations for both parties and what employees are expected to do. It's not an employment contract that they're guaranteed any kind of employment, but it is a contract that the employee is saying, yeah, if you allow me to work from home, I will agree to these expectations, including furnishing my own equipment, my own chair, subject to any ADA requirements, but I'll also maintain a safe workspace. A lot of times, the guidance that we sent out to districts, originally says most telework policies and telework agreements say you cannot care for your children
That's exactly what I thought about.
while you are teleworking, that this is not a reason for you to give up your daycare or whatever it is. Now, right now, we're in a little bit of a different situation where we're all kind of working with kids at home with kids in the background of our Zoom meetings, including myself. But those are under normal circumstances. And so that's what like number 4 is supposed to mean that you asked about. We want a safe location that's free of distraction. That's to prevent injury in the new workplace as well. We also want people to designate a certain part of their home or their alternative work environment as this is it. So when they go to the kitchen to grab a snack and a soda or something, and then they automatically they cut off a finger while they're chopping up a piece of fruit. That's not on us. Those sorts of things. Sorry to be a little graphic there, but on number 7, he says this is about adhering to the same policies and procedures. Well, just because you're working at home doesn't mean you're no longer an employee. We do want employees to do that. Now, certainly understanding when somebody's violated a rule or a policy or procedure when working from home, it's not going to be as readily apparent if it occurred in a school environment, most likely. That's true. But this also kind of goes down into number 8. We simply cannot, police work at home or when teachers are working or anybody's working from home as we could police work occurring in the school environment. However, over the long haul, we are able to determine whether or not people are getting things done and whether or not they are being productive and whether it's working out for all the parties involved. So, those are things I think that's got to come into consideration too. So I'm happy to answer any more questions. I hope that was helpful on those items.
I just can see from a teacher's point of view, and maybe from a principal's point of view, if there should be a time when we would have superintendent or a supervisor that was all about right down the line that, maybe I had just seen that crazy man who talks from his car and does a spoof on all things crazy. It talked about the observation of a person teaching from home with children in the background. And I don't know, there maybe just seems to be a little more, when these are emergency situations, it's entirely different from what you're talking about, where an industry says to their employee, you would need to work from home and it's okay for you to work from home. And I think we need to be careful of the verbiage when we're talking about, because we're not in the foreseeable future probably going to go to a strictly teach from home environment. But in an emergency situation, I just think the verbiage needs to be a little more careful, that can't hold somebody to this kind of rigid circumstances that the words say.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Case.
Ms. Case, not being a computer expert, can the principal go in and see how they're teaching on the Zoom or whatever they're going into? Can the superintendent do that?
Yes, ma'am. In fact, we've had a number of staff members who have invited administrators to participate in their meetings.
Okay.
But certainly in the same way that they might want to observe a regular classroom instruction, if an administrator wanted to join a meeting or a Zoom call or otherwise, a staff member would be able to share that link with them as well.
Share, or they can go into it whether they want to share or not? what I'm thinking about is heaven help us, but down the road, what if this thing went on for half a year and the principals had to evaluate the teachers? And, or if the General Assembly or the governor, whoever has DPI had said, no, you got to finish out your year of observations. Can a principal just go into without being invited?
Well, I think, again, that just goes back to what will this look like moving forward and what are all the ways in which that would change? Right now, if an administrator wanted to do that, they would simply say, Ms. Case, share the link with me for when your class meets. I want to jump on and see it, kind of thing. And a staff member would respond to that appropriately the way that they would if we were normally operating. I think when it comes down to what will it look like if we have to do this for 3 more months or 6 more months, who knows? But we know that it will have to evolve, kind of as Ms. Korn is saying, the language around that will have to evolve because it's a very different world.
I sort of agree with Ms. Korn. That's a pretty tough statement there in number 7 and number 8.
Would it help to put like within Mr. Rapture saying, like with reasonable accommodations or something like that to make it seem not as so strict sounding?
Teleworkers must not deviate from the work schedule. Those are all things that, we would hope that we have hired principals and assistant principals, superintendents, and leadership staff that would interpret that according to the situation.
Yes, ma'am. I would add to that, though, if I were just connecting this to kind of how we're operating right now, we're very explicit about where the school day is right now for our learn from home staffing, the people that are working from. What we don't want is teachers saying, you know what, my AP history class is going to meet at 8 p.m. because that's more convenient for me, kind of thing. And so, this teleworking policy, when we read it from an administrative staffing end, are not kind of how do you handle everything in a state of emergency necessarily, right? But should you now consider allowing people to work remotely? Let's just say everything returned to normal, and I use that term very loosely. But should it, and you consider this policy would allow for the board and the superintendent and ultimately supervisors to give that consideration, in unique circumstances. And so because it's a brand new policy, I expect that it will evolve like all other policies. You'll continue to see revisions around it, but I can assure you as a board that we will be very careful about how such a thing would be implemented because it's sort of uncharted territory for us.
Well, the good thing is we get to see it last.
Yes.
You have to bring it to the board for us to approve it. So you approve the teleworking from home, right?
That's correct.
What is it now? You have to.
So the employee would have to get approval from their principal, would have to get approval from the superintendent, would have to get approval from us.
And the specific language.
If it was an individual.
Right.
The specific language around that is when you start talking about, if you look at C specifically, so you might have temporary, episodic, it talks about in that paragraph. But if you look at paragraph 3, it says any teleworking arrangement for an employee that exceeds more than 20 work days for a single episode or a cumulative total of more than 40 must be reported to the board. And again, the superintendent and the board can terminate that teleworking agreement at any time. So if we're approving, let's say, someone to telework for 1 day for a unique circumstance, no, is that going to get brought to you?
Sure.
Absolutely not. But if someone is now in a quasi-permanent position, I'll call it, of teleworking, you'd know about. Yeah, it's use those words together since they mean completely different things. Yeah, exactly.
Ms. Case, I've heard some high school teachers talking about their kids are calling in later at night with their assignments and stuff because they're working during the day or, whatever. But this says that they regularly assign place of work, including their breaks and their lunch and that's not going to limit them being able to take different times if the teacher's willing to do that from the kids.
No, ma'am. And again, I would emphasize right now we're under a state of emergency and we're doing things we've never done before.
Right.
Our focus has been engagement right now. So if the time of students available to us is 6:30 and that allows us to serve that kid, our teachers are like making themselves available all hours of the day. If we think well into the future, it might be a much more structured period of time that we're talking about.
Any other questions, comments? All right, let's move on to 7560.
Thank you, Mr. Craven. 7560, pretty straightforward. Again, this is dealing with the permissions for salary deductions for absences and discipline for certain exempt employees. And again, it's a base revision that clarifies the group of exempt employees for whom the policy applies, i.e. those exempt employees who are subject to a salary basis requirement under FLSA, and then revises Section A significantly to clarify the deductions from salaries of exempt employees that are authorized and under what circumstances they may be made. I would immediately state that if you'd like clarification on any of this, we'll bring Mr. Sosha down to the front because he's going to be the person that would be able to answer this. But again, it's just dealing with making sure that we're able to clearly articulate such guidance to employees and to our finance department staff.
Ms. Case, I have a question about 2A,
Okay.
military pay. Do we keep paying when they have to go in the National Guard or they're called in with a soldier or something? Because we had a principal that was gone for quite a few months. We keep paying them their normal salary, even though they're getting a salary or they're getting pay there, right?
I would look right over my shoulder there.
You should.
Well, it says,
You are allowed by law to deduct that if they miss a work day and take leave. Deduct what they make as their differential.
say that again, please.
So if I'm in the National Guard and I take Friday off to go, I'm not really taking it off. I'm going to go serve, do my duty, my weekend duty, but I'm taking it off from school and I take leave and I get paid, let's say $50 from the National Guard, but my pay from the school system would be $100. The school system can just give me the 50 to make me completely whole instead of the whole 150.
You're
in the leave.
kidding.
Yeah, I'm not saying we do that. I'm saying we can do that.
Okay.
I had to say question, right?
Same thing with jury duty. You know, when somebody goes to jury duty,
$12
and
for
you
that.
know, you get like $1.75 and a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
More than that to make the check difference.
That's right.
So we can make our own decision on this A, right?
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And then payroll deductions, 7620, which is,
Sorry.
oh, no, sir, not a problem. Payroll deductions, again, just simply add some guidance. It revises the introductory paragraph, adds a new provision to authorize deductions to recoup the advancement or overpayment of wages, and then replaces the personnel office with the superintendent or designee in the last paragraph. And other than that, Mr. Craven, unless there are questions about those minor changes, those are the only ones that I bring to you today for consideration.
Is this Ms. Corn, is this first reading?
First
Yes.
reading, yes, ma'am. Do we have questions
question-
first about 7620?
I'm sorry.
No.
Anybody has questions about that? Okay.
I would ask for clarification from Mr. Shatley on the policies that are being revised, given their emergency nature from the School Board Association. It certainly would be first reading under K, which is teleworking, because it's a new policy. The other policies exist and they are relatively minor changes, but I will defer to Mr. Shatley on that one.
If you all want to approve HI and J, which is remote participation, communicable disease, and emergency closings on first reading, I have no problem with that. But considering where we are in the state of things, I'm not so sure it's going to make a difference, if that makes sense.
And the L and M are again.
I
just
was just talking about HI and J.
Okay.
Let's
Um,
just do them all individually and just knock it out. Is that what you're saying?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
I'm just saying
We can approve H.I.J. now.
you can approve them on first reading for full approval, I mean,
Okay.
by waiving second reading.
Gotcha.
But you don't have to. And to be honest, remote participation in board meetings is going to change again as of the legislature's
There's no
action last week. So I'm not sure, it's kind of moot to approve HI and J by waiving your second reading. But I mean, you're certainly welcome to at this point in time, or you can just approve them all first reading and approve them all second reading next month.
Or what if we just made the motion to just do them all on first reading and then
Do them all first reading.
Well, I'm going to, this is Ms. Corn, I really still have problems with policy K.
Okay.
And I would certainly have no problem approving it for first reading, but I would like some rewording or the general conditions on teleworking working. If some of those were in emergency situations, I have no problem at all. Some just in general, are okay. I'm just bothered by
We don't have to approve it at all.
7,
It's our,
8, and 4.
it's our choice, right? On teleworking?
That's correct.
Choice.
I'm a little surprised that one came out. You know how they kind of say hard facts make bad law,
Yeah, well,
hard
that's
facts
the
make
problem.
bad policy. I
can give
understand
you-
why they're trying to push that out to everybody, but they're also kind of pushing it out for a situation which we're not in right now too, which is,
I'm okay tabling that policy for a later date.
I mean, I would have to vote no now on that one, the way it's worded, because some things you can do for emergencies and some things, the application of the rules, as I can give you many examples, but they take on a different outlook when you,
Kind of seems like the wrong time to push that one out.
now,
Because it gets a little muddy between the state that we're in now
Right.
versus,
in general.
Yeah.
quote unquote, normal times.
So
So
make-
would anybody be opposed to removing K today for a later date?
I can move to table it if that
To table
is
it?
what you would like. That's what it
I'll
takes.
accept a motion.
I move that we table policy 7503 until there can be more discussion and direction and for a later date.
Do we have a second on that?
Second, Amy Lynn Holt, sorry, Dot.
Do we have any
Overscore.
other discussion on that policy? Does anyone, no other discussion? All right, Mr. Egoff, yes or no to table it?
Yes.
Mr. Absher,
Yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
and Ms. Case?
Yes.
I'll vote to table it as well. 7503 is tabled. I will take, so I can take H-I-J, L, and M together.
unless there's no objection.
All right, I will take a motion on H-I-J, L, M, which are policy revisions.
I move that we approve H, I, J, L, and M on first reading
Okay,
as presented.
do I have a second?
J. Egoff, second.
Great, any discussions? Ms. Holt,
Yes.
Mr. Wood,
Yes.
Ms. Case,
Yes.
Ms. Corn,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Those are approved. All right, we are going to take a quick 10-minute break, just to hang out for a second. We've got quite a bit coming up here in these board reports. So 10-minute break, and we'll be right back here.
I'm glad I rescheduled my 4.
Yeah, I told you.
Tres amigos.
Social distance, gentlemen. Ready? All right, we are back for the second half of our board meeting. And first up is going to be a COVID-19 Learn from Home update from Dr. Jan King. Take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Craven, and thank you, board members. And I just want to kind of walk back mentally to, I guess, a couple of hours ago when you complimented our teachers, our educators, our entire school family for responding so well to what was a very unexpected emergency. Even though we knew that it might happen, it still felt, when you find out on Saturday, March 14th, that we're going to continue learning, but we're going to do it in quite a different fashion. I appreciate your recognition of all those folks who have worked so hard. And I often hear our superintendent talk about the HCPS family, and truly these times have reminded us of how we are all in this together. I heard you use the term emergency, Ms. Korn, and I've used that term on this slide, talking about emergency remote learning. Has it looked perfect? No. If we'd had a long time to plan it, a long time to practice and pull it off, it might have looked a little differently. But I can't tell you how pleased I am overall that everyone has really risen to the occasion. You see there, I want to start with a kudos to Mr. Fender, the tech staff, and also our school-based media center folks and administrators. We have now sent out on loan over 7,000 Chromebooks. We have had Chromebook carts in middle school and high school media centers for students to check out one, just like they check out a library book. But that's been a very, very low number. We never really were prepared for how do you break apart those carts and the charging carts and get all those ready to check out quickly. And you can see a picture there in the bottom left from Hendersonville Middle. I just got to witness that process that they had set up for drive-by pickup. It was very, very well done on very short notice. And then also to our educators, teachers, teacher assistants, therapists, all who have adapted very quickly. Everybody's level of readiness for this type of instruction was very different. And we had some folks who jumped right to it and were very comfortable with things like Google Classroom or setting up a Google Meet. But we had others who had a huge learning curve. On the right, you see a kindergarten class having their morning meeting. And had you even mentioned to me earlier this year that morning meeting might look like that, I would not have believed you. But certainly it has been a learning experience for all of us. Just so proud of our families, how engaged they are. One thing I think you're aware of, I just want to make sure that you know and our community knows, when you see that third bullet about advanced placement testing, that is the only testing going on in the school system this spring. For the first time in my memory, of any recent memory, no end of grade tests, no end of course tests, no NC final exams. All of those by either federal government or state government have been ended. The College Board did continue with advanced placement testing. That actually started today. As we speak, there are students taking their AP exams. Mr. Fender and his staff made hotspots available for those students who needed them to take their exams. The College Board shortened the exams. They shortened the exam schedule and have been very great to work with nationwide in terms of helping our students have the option to earn that college credit.
Awesome.
On the next slide, I just think it's appropriate when we talk about learn from home, as we give shout outs to educators, we also have to give shout outs to the families who have helped make this work. We have asked families to do drive-through pickup, and they have been very responsive about that. On the right, you're going to see a bag. This is at Hillendale Elementary School. And a teacher had packed a ball, a playground ball that they knew was a student's favorite, and recognizing they wouldn't see them again for some time, had also included very personal items for specific students. As the number of COVID-19 cases, positive cases increased in Henderson County, we switched to a mailing model rather than ask people to get out again and to reduce the touches on things. And so we've had one mail pickup mail delivery that's been completed. Parents have dropped off those assignments, and today and tomorrow we have another delivery going home through U.S. Mail. That's for our students, roughly 20% of our students who are unable to engage for whatever reason in online remote instruction. And so they get paper pencil assignments and get feedback from teachers that way. Additionally, I've been amazed at the creativity around communication between home and school. We mentioned the Google Meets and the fact that an administrator can join, but parents can join in. I hear from parents. Actually, my brother has 2 young children in our school system, and he said he's often shooed away. He's working teleworking for his company.
Yeah.
He's shooed away because his daughter does not want him in her classroom meeting, but he finds it fascinating to listen and see the quality of instruction going on, even in a remote setting. You may have also seen we had teachers who were highlighted on our local news media, WLOS, teaching online. They've made showers into whiteboards. They've been so creative, and it's just encouraging to see. And then I don't think that we can talk about Learn from Home without giving a shout out to the other side of the shop with child nutrition and child care services. Those employees have really risen to the occasion. But Mr. Caldwell and I have had many conversations that full bellies learn better. And so serving the number of meals that have been served per day, our child care folks going to full time to take care of emergency service children and our own staff children. And then we have continued to provide services like counseling and social work services in a different manner than we typically have in the past. And so while this is traumatic for us as adults, we recognize that this can be especially traumatic for a young person. And being purposeful in how we support students. When things for them may not just look different in terms of learning, but we know in terms of the economy, things may look differently at home as well, and trying to be very supportive of families. With all of this has come another piece of what I might call the most complex part of Learn from Home, which is how do you assess student progress during Learn from Home? And our State Board of Education has been diligent. They've met, they have shared information with us. It's been ongoing as late as last week in terms of how we grade. I'm going to give you the short synopsis. We are getting ready to push all this out with teachers and our local forums for this with teachers beginning next week. In elementary, the State Board has said no student in K-5 will get grades. They will get, their report card is going to say NG on it for no grade, with the comment code COVID-19. Instead, they will get written feedback in all subjects. And it will be in some ways, maybe more robust than a grade and a comment code. It will be academic feedback that encompasses the entire school year. The State Board has been very clear that remote learning should not be detrimental to any student's grade, and we've certainly taken that into account. Students should only have the opportunity to improve their grade since March 13th. Middle school is somewhat similar. Students in middle school, again, will not receive the traditional ABC kind of grade. They will receive a PC-19 or a WC-19 based on their performance. A PC-19, of course, indicates they're meeting that grade level standard. A WC-19 does not necessarily mean that they have to repeat the course, or it doesn't necessarily mean an F. It just means they maybe have not met that grade level standard yet. In middle school, locally, we will also be, this was optional, but we've decided to do it. We will be providing similar academic feedback as we are sending home in K-5, so parents know the strengths and the areas for continued growth. We do have some middle school students taking high school courses. Those middle school students who take a high school course will follow the high school guidance that we're getting ready to talk about. However, a middle school student who takes a high school course, if they choose to take the grade, which is one of the high school options, it never calculates into their GPA because middle school course credits, middle schoolers taking a high school course credit, that never calculates into GPA anyway.
So why give them the option?
It's because it's a high school course and the course will appear on their transcript. It just will not calculate into the GPA. But the State Board gave them an option, so that's why we are. And then our high schools students are really in 2 buckets. The first bucket is available for 9th, 10th, and 11th graders. Much like you may have heard some colleges and universities were doing, that's kind of the route that the State Board took, which is our freshmen, sophomores, and juniors will, and middle schooler taking a high school course, will have a choice. They can take their numeric grade, and it will calculate into their GPA, or they may take a PC-19, WC-19 instead, and that does not calculate into GPA. In high school, a WC-19 does not award course credit. PC-19 is a pass and it's course credit, but does not calculate in GPA. The other,
Okay, say that again. PC it's a grade they can choose, whatever their grade was.
It's they can choose the number grade,
The number grade, okay.
and that will calculate in
Oh,
GPA.
they can choose that, okay.
Or they can choose PC 19 if they're passing,
I got you.
and it's no GPA calculation, but it does give them the credit.
Get the credit, okay.
So can I ask a question about that?
course.
So if I have a child on the 4-block schedule, and they decided to do the PC, those 4 courses will not be, it wouldn't be divided like by, well, it would be 8 per year. So it wouldn't be 32, it would be 24, right? It would be like if they have, I'm trying to think of the right way to do that, but it's, you wouldn't add those classes in as a divisor to get the grades. It would just be a pass kind of over on the side, right?
So it would be a credit towards graduation, but
Mhm.
that PC 19 would never calculate into GPA when you're doing the divisor. That's correct.
Okay,
It would count towards their overall credits for graduation,
right.
but have no impact on GPA.
Okay, and
So
'Cause
they
I
would
had a
still
te-
have 32 possible credits.
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct for block.
so I had a teacher ask me this today. We were kind of talking and going over Connor's grades, and he was a little frustrated that the state's not giving more guidance, and so I was sharing with him, well, I think I understand that if he has like above a C, it's better to take that in some instances. And so we were kind of going through that, and he said, but are these colleges going to look at these transcripts and say, why did that kid take a PC 19? Why didn't they take a B? Or like they're not supposed to, but are they really gonna?
So I think that's a really good question. And that did come up at the state board meeting. And DPI has been in contact with the community college system and the UNC system purposefully about that. We don't want to harm any student with these options. And the state board didn't either, and have been very clear about that. I think they're offering similar options at several institutions of higher ed as well. And so I think it goes back to that. We're in an emergency status, and things, a P on a transcript in the past may have flagged something differently than it will during COVID.
So hopefully they all will stick to that. We're not going to be critical.
So if they were failing at the end of first semester, they've got to repeat the course
If it's
in high school.
in high school, if it's a block schedule, they had finished almost 9 weeks, we'd finished 8 weeks.
Mhm.
If they were failing as of March 13th, then hopefully they've used remote learning to get to passing. If they have not, they'll probably take because we're not going to give Fs anywhere per state board guidance. They would take the WC 19 and they would either repeat the course, or they might be eligible for credit recovery depending on what their grade was. And I'll give you this example. A student could have been failing March 13th with, I'm just going to make up a 57, 3 points from passing, and not have been able to bring that up during remote learning, but might be able to bring that up in a credit recovery situation versus repeating the whole course. That could be very different if your average was not a 57 at March 13th. And the state board guidance is clear that they students who take a WC-19 can either repeat the course for credit or take advantage of credit recovery options that are available. And that's much like what we do now for students who are almost passing a class.
But our recovery is not going to be till starting next year,
Yeah, we're
school
just gonna
year.
ask.
We're waiting on more guidance for that. We know the General Assembly has set aside some summer learning money, most of that earmarked for elementary. I've talked to our high school principals to see what we might be able to plan, and staff, because that's the big issue is staffing. You're going to see a slide in a minute that's specific to seniors. If any of our seniors need credit recovery, we're going to make sure that happens by June 30th. We want them to graduate on time with their class.
And from what I'm hearing from the high school, the elementary kids they're pretty much dedicated because their parents are right there with them doing the remote home. But the high school kids some of them have done very, very little, turned in very, very little because they knew of this policy. So, that has sort of deterred the high school kids from doing as much work or as much remote learning because they knew of this.
I've heard similar stories, Ms. Case, and I've shared that, and I've heard similar stories across the state when students, the senior policy came out March 27th from the state board. And just to before I move to seniors, I'll mention the high school 9/11 is a little different if you're in a year-long course. So our students at Hendersonville High School or several of our block schools have A-Day, B-Day situations. A year-long course, their first semester is already stored and does calculate in GPA as a half credit. So what the state board did is divide the year-long courses into 2 half-credit courses. And I'm simplifying this. Our FAQ document is 33 pages with links. So I'm making it a little simpler than maybe it is because there's a lot of scenarios.
But once fall rolls around, there's not going to be any WC-19s. Either you have a PC-19 or you failed it and have to take it over, correct? Or you didn't fail it, but you have to take it over.
Yes, if you have a WC-19 on there and it's a course you need to graduate, I'll just say English 3.
Yeah.
You're going to have to either do credit recovery or retake the course.
So do you think that we will offer credit recovery? Like say I'm a junior and I didn't pass English 3. Like, do you think we're going to offer that as an option, like remotely? Oh, I mean, I know the t-shirt says I don't know, but like, or maybe after school in the fall for,
Well, I don't know the logistics. I can tell you we're committed to trying to make sure every high school student has the opportunity to graduate on time with their cohort.
So for seniors, we're going to move
Move
the
mountains.
mountain, and we're going to make it possible.
Yes, yes.
Do we know the kind of senior numbers right now?
I'm pleased to say that is a very small handful of students who are still working diligently to make the June 5th deadline with lots of support, and I'm going to call it encouragement right now to get there. Our counselors did at Mr. Caldwell's instruction, I guess very shortly after we went to remote learning, he had all of our high school counselors do a transcript audit. We anticipated it would become a 22 credit diploma from the state. Indeed, it did. And our counselors were spot on. They know exactly where every student is, which courses that if it's an elective and they happen to not pass it would still be okay, and which courses they have to pass by June 5th. So I'm pleased to say it's a very small number right now.
And then correct me if I'm wrong, but on those transcripts, this PC-19 and the W-19 is also a different kind of category. So if someone looks at that transcript, it's going to be kind of COVID related. Like they'll know that
Well,
PC-19 is COVID, right?
inside the state of North Carolina, those 2 codes are consistent statewide. I think because it's a pandemic, when a student transfers out of state, potentially those codes will flag just but knowing it's this year, but different states may use different codes. The last bucket on this slide is just about our seniors. Again, doing everything we can to make sure all seniors have an on-time graduation. They do not have the choice of a numeric grade. That was decided in March by the state board, discussed again last week at the state board meeting because there were some seniors who wanted to have that choice, but the state board voted to uphold their previous decision about seniors. And so they will all choose PC-19 or WC-19.
oh, wow.
Jan, on AP courses, I've heard some teachers saying they've just quit. Do we or did the state pay for AP tests?
The state pays for the AP testing, and we have continued to require all students to take it because there's no negative implication for them if they don't do well on it. It can only help them.
Okay. On transcripts to colleges for these juniors that's maybe, quit working too, can you put AP if you did not take the test?
Yeah, the AP course is separate from the test. And nationally and even in our state, students sometimes take the AP test and don't take the exam. It's been a local requirement for us to make students take the exam.
But I mean, if the child decides that's paid for and we require them, can they still put AP on their college transcripts?
It will be on there because that's the course code that they've had. Yeah. it would stay. I know this next slide is too small to read, but I put the link on there for you should you need it. I will credit DPI, just like everyone's been working feverishly to create documents that did not exist before March 14th. They have given us excellent FAQ documents for grading guidance, working with our public information officer, Ms. McGowan Gorsuch, right now on how we're going to communicate with our families soon. But they've made these nice one-pagers that will help families understand, because I'll just be real honest with you. If I'm a freshman in high school and I don't understand how GPA works right now, I might make a different decision about PC-19 or numeric grades than I would my junior or senior year when I really understand how all that works. There will be a 45-day window when school starts back in the fall for students to request a grade change if they have a change of heart about what they want. But then after that 45-day window, that's it. So if you realize 2 years from now,
Are we
I
gonna have
wish
them sign a waiver or something, or how's that gonna work?
we are working internally on the forms for that, but it's an attestation form where they have to say that they have discussed it with their parents.
Gotcha.
Um,
Are parents going to have to sign that?
it's a student attestation form. When we look at the scale of how many students that impacts and the idea of trying to get all those back during COVID, we have concerns about that. But we'll communicate this spring and then communicate the 45-day change option window in the fall. And then my last slide is just thinking about, okay, so what are, I've been laughing saying it's like drinking from a fire hose. It's constantly a new thing. So what's on the learn from home priority list right now? Well, first of all, I mentioned it's working with those seniors. We want to make sure that COVID does not, that we have done everything we can do to make sure students have an on-time completion rate for their courses. Secondarily, communicating with families and students, that academic feedback, and then how we can support them no matter what's going on with their family. We also, the General Assembly passed a statute that we have a remote learning plan due to the State Board of Education on July 20th. It has 13 critical components. You'll hear Mr. Caldwell talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So we started that work for the remote learning plan. And then all of those ideas into, I don't have a crystal ball, but what will re-entry look like and what are the implications for instruction, credit recovery, remote learning? How can we do what we've been doing better if we are charged to do this again? And that's kind of where we are right now. I'd be happy to answer any learn from home questions that you might have.
So are we going to take up all the computers and then give them back for the 5-day learning? Are the 5 days going to be all together? Are they going to be spread out? I don't know.
Hold on, I got to get my t-shirt.
Okay, I got it. I don't know.
I don't know yet. Those are all the things we're talking about, Ms. Case, because they're all really valid questions and involve a lot of logistics to think about. I think the calendar committee will be very useful and help because they represent so many perspectives, helping us think through all of those things.
Can we make those decisions, or is the state going to tell us when those remote days are?
We'll get to make those decisions in our calendar. The state just says we have to have them, but
Okay.
we'll make some decisions locally about when and where they are.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, thank you,
Okay,
Dr. King.
Thank you.
Next up, General Assembly COVID-19 updates. Mr. Bo Caldwell.
I just want to very quickly go through the General Assembly updates. I know you've seen some of them, and all of them are not in here. They did a lot of human resource updates, and Mr. Rhodes is working through those right now. And I just want to hit the highlights and talk to Mr. Shatley that he certainly, I told him to chime in because he may know more information about this than I do. So go ahead and hit the slide, the next one, or you want me to? All right, I got it. Let's talk funding. The General Assembly allocated these funding pockets, child nutrition, $75 million, and you can see going down through the list. Now, I know the first question is, well, how much is Henderson County going to get and what we can spend it on? We joke around and I say you can get it in 3 words or 4. You can say, I don't know, or I do not know at this point, either one that would you would like. And I hate to be facetious, but they have not provided us those details yet. Okay. As far as the child nutrition, the summer learning is a very interesting one. I know Ms. Case, you asked about that just a second ago. You know, what is that going to look like? And they've put money in the state for that, but once again, we're not sure. You go through there, you know, we talked about it in the budget cycle about devices, and there's $56.5 million going to the state for devices and other support. Exceptional children, I told you that there may be issues there that we've got to look at. I do have to say this, kudos. I think that listening to superintendents across the state, that we pretty well hit the issues as far as funding goes, that we felt like could be some priorities for us. But right now, I can't tell you exactly unless it's recently hit Bernie's desk on how much this means to Henderson County Public Schools. And I'm going to turn to him. No, he's shaking his head no. Okay. But that just kind of gives you an update of the funding. Testing waivers. I think you heard from Dr. King that the AP test is the only test. They waived all testing for the state, for our children this year. And of course, the school report card. You can't have a school report card unless you have testing. So therefore, there'll be no school report card coming out for us next fall. Read to Achieve waivers. You know that 3rd grade testing was huge for children because there was the summer program, 3rd grade retention termination. This goes way back, and Dean, I think it's a school law, and the principals have the right to grade in place. And so I think that's kind of where they went back with this one at this point, is to allow principals to make those 3rd grade decisions. 4th grade reading assessment. Every 4th grader, when we get back, we'll have an assessment to kind of see where they are within the first 10 days to the start of the school year. I don't know anything else about the test, the length of it, how long it will be. I just know this is a requirement, and I'm going to turn to Dr. King. Any more information about the 4th grade test at this point? No. Okay. And then, of course, it waives our online posting of K through 3 reading outcomes. Dean, I'm kind of rushing through these due to the length of time, but do you have any comments about any of those 3 that you know of?
No, I would say, you know, if you have a school that was listed as a school of improvement, I don't think you guys.
We do not.
There's some odd rules for those, but otherwise, no.
Good enough. Just feel free to jump in, as the old saying goes. If you remember a couple of years ago, the General Assembly placed on us about an advanced math placement for students in the middle school and what was required. Because if what was required, now I almost have to bring Dr. King back to get the exact numbers, but a child had to score so well on the EOG to be placed. Well, there's not an EOG test, so how is a child going to determine? Right there, basically, it tells you that you can read in black and white, but it's basically going to be the school and the teacher and to make that decision where that child needs to be in advanced math placement next year for those classes. CPR graduation. That requirement for our seniors was waived as well this year. They do not have to have CPR. Dr. King and I were already in place. We already had a plan to make sure we knew exactly how many seniors didn't have it, and we were ready. And then this came out that they were waived. I do have to say this, though. There were a lot of middle school students, because you can also get this in the middle school, that a lot of middle schools had this scheduled for the last 9 weeks. So therefore, unfortunately, I think high schools are going to have a little bit extra workload with this CPR coming forward, because I think that was like I said, a last 9 weeks exercise for middle school. Let's talk calendar. And we've kind of hit around it. And do you have a calendar to approve today? No, you do not. Okay, as superintendent, what I would like to do is get the calendar committee back together to look at the different types of days that are there. And this one, excuse me, I jumped ahead. This is the 1920 calendar. This is this year's calendar. I apologize. This one says basically remote learning meets our hours. And of course, student attendance, but everyone was counted present the last 7 weeks. Okay. Now let me go to the next one. Okay. As far as the calendar and attendance and modifications and remote instruction plans. And we are going to get the calendar committee back, as I just stated, about next year's calendar, because the first thing we need to talk about is remote instruction plans. Because there's going to be 5 days of remote learning in next year's calendar. As a school system, I will bring to you a calendar on where we feel like the calendar committee would like to place those days. What do those days look like? Yes.
Can you explain why?
That's exactly.
I know.
This is
Like
so.
what is the, okay, we're saying everything's back to normal. We're back in school in August and everything's going up and they're like, oh, hold up. Remember that last year? Let's try that again for 5 days.
Let's try that for 5
So
days.
what is the theory behind it? I could see if it was like professional development or, something, but what's the point?
Are they consecutive?
If you watch my answer to this at the Buncombe County School Tuesday, you would know that I also have that T-shirt that says I don't know. Probably try to speculate 2 reasons. The first reason is they want you to adopt this remote instruction plan to be prepared to move into that direction, and the 5 days is just a test of that plan.
We haven't been
That's my speculation. Now, the second reason I think is, and I think probably the more likely reason, is that they wanted to build in additional time for students next year without having to pay anybody to do it.
Yeah.
And so you see some fuzzy math in the legislation. It says you have to have 190 student days plus 5 remote instructional days. But you can only still have a 215-day calendar. So they didn't change that. 215 days is what our teachers contract for and what we employ all our 10-month employees, but that includes your annual leave days and your holidays. So around winter break and spring break, all those days. And then there are teacher work days too. So they said, well, you need to go to school for 190 days. What that really amounts to is it says 185 days or 1,025 hours plus 5 additional in-person days. Then we also want you to do these 5 remote days whose hours can count into the 1,025. The fact of the matter is you get to your 1,025 hours well in advance of 185 or even 100. So I don't think you're going to really have to add many, if any at all. I was talking to Mr. Caldwell a little bit about this during the break, 5 in-person days, because they're already really kind of built in. And however you choose to schedule your remote instructional days is up to you all. It may look at your calendar and say, we need to do this on optional teacher work days, or we don't. That's just going to be up to you all to eventually decide. But the fact remains, you still can only go 215 days. Teachers can only work 215 days, and that basically includes their 10 annual leave days that are automatically taken off and their 11 holidays. So that really doesn't give you a whole.
For the,
Mr. Craven, I'm sorry, but what I heard was basically what he said is on July 20th, we have to have a plan down to the state that tells us exactly how we're going to improve. There's 13 things that we must show that we're going to do. And I heard that these are 5 practice days. Now, I was talking to a parent over the weekend and they're like, really? I mean, I've been home with them for 7 weeks. And now when school starts back, you're
We're
going to
gonna
send them home
practice.
5 days.
I
And
don't think I know of other school districts that were not up and running as quickly as we were, and it's not as smooth as, even though it's been as smooth as what this has been, and I'm sure that's played into it. But my question is, do you think Dr. Bryant can just go ahead and predict the snow days for next year? And
That
just
was my
go
question.
ahead
Can we use
and
those?
add those remote days for the snow days?
So do we,
Yeah, you
I'll tell
can.
you why, because the statute's very specific. It says if you received a waiver, calendar waiver, which means you already got to start on August 17th. You can also use 5 additional remote days on inclement weather days. By basically adding that to the legislation, it precludes anybody who didn't have a waiver to begin with.
so you can't do
So
it?
you could use a remote instructional day on a bad weather day, but whether or not you could count that towards your hours, our day requirement, your 1,025 hour requirement, is questionable at this point in time. Now, I will say this, from my understanding, the General Assembly passed this law very quickly in an effort to provide great relief on lots of different questions, not only to our industry, but industries across the board. They're coming back. They're going to have to fix a few things. They were looking at big picture items. I think there's going to be some, as things come to light, there's going to be some that weren't necessarily, or things that were unforeseen when they were adopting the legislature. So I don't necessarily think it was their intent to preclude a district didn't have a waiver, not be able to count inclement weather days as that, but it looks like that may possibly be the effect. So, but hopefully they'll, clarity on that before the school.
So we have to have the days picked out. We couldn't say we're just going to bank these 5 days and use them as we need them. We have to tell them before July 20th where the days are.
We're going to put them, you have to designate them in your calendar. So
And one of the things.
But we don't send that at July 20th, right? We don't. Send
we've got to approve a calendar, and the issue that we're going to have is families will want to know. I mean, because
Right.
right now we're already behind. We were so proud that we were talking about a 21-22 calendar, and now here it is in May, and I've not provided you with a calendar that we're going to start on August the 17th, and that's the next slide.
And as of right now, I would say you need to designate those 5 days now, but you may be able to say in your calendar, give your superintendent some flexibility that says, superintendent, change a remote learning day on an inclement weather day. I think
Yeah.
that is an option that you might be able to do.
What I would like for you to do, and we have, I think, Ms. Korn and Ms. Holder on the calendar committee, and so you will be involved in the discussion to help us develop this calendar that we'll bring back to the board in June with hopefully more clarification. Dean, before you leave, which I didn't put in this slide, I think they also, if I remember correctly, at the very last, put in their definitions of year-round calendars. Yes.
They added a pretty specific definition of year.
Right, which we'll have to talk about our 21 or count, 21,
But that,
22
I will
calendar.
say that definition of year-round calendar only applies to next school. Although I would presume,
Carry
into,
forward.
put into the regular statutes
I bet too.
at some point in time.
Well, and that's why we took that calendar off this meeting, because we didn't want people to get confused on which calendar we're getting ready to approve. Yes, Ms.
When's Blue Ridge starting? Because can our early college start August 17th?
Early college is exempt from this.
So the question too is, so we typically, when you do the calendar anyway, you based on the hours, but you also do it by the days. So in a sense, we might not really have to add anything, correct? Because you always plan a little bit ahead. Anyway.
Mr. Absher, you're exactly, you're going to hear some of the things that we need to talk to the calendar committee about. There are some things that they need to sit and look at on days that we have hours that we may not truly need 180. We're starting August the 17th. There could be a way to look at it. We could finish the semester before Christmas. So therefore, these are things that I want the calendar committee to take time. The superintendent, Dr. Bryant, we have played around. Dr. Bryant has version 1, version 2, version 3, version 4, compromise version, modified version, you name it. He's got a version of different calendars that we started looking at. And so, but this is going to be a group decision. We're going to bring board members and teachers and those people that were on that calendar committee, bring them together and let them discuss this calendar on what we feel like is best, because it is a huge change. I think the reason I put this here, and we can get into the 5 remote days and 5 instructional days, and I think when we present the calendar and you have it up there, it will be certainly make a little bit more clear. The thing that I do want for people to pick up is opening day for students will be August the 17th.
Yeah,
Now
that
that-
needs to be put out there.
That
in
needs to be
big, bold
big
letters.
right now. Now, so are you telling me on August the 17th, we're going to open up school? That is the date right now that is printed,
What
okay?
they say.
But right now, who
Now,
knows?
if that's the case, though, semester could be done by
That's what I want the calendar committee to look at. They can look at the number of days and how vacation days and work days fall in and some of those and certainly think about it for a second. We certainly don't want kids on campus on election day.
Mhm.
Well, you could use a remote learning day. So therefore you count it as a student day, but the kids are not there. The teachers are there working remotely. And so you don't have to count it. You're counting it as student hours, but the kids are not there for election day. So there's ways that we can look at
Nice.
this committee and start thinking about it, how we could do it. I will say, I mean, as a preview for this calendar committee, yes, to get the semester done before Christmas is wonderful. However, I've been in this school business now going on 36 years, and I think this is going to be the toughest August. If we're back, it's going to be the toughest August. And I'll talk about reentry a little bit later in my general comments. But right now, and I want to say opening date for students right now is penciled in on August the 17th.
That's year round too.
That will
We
be,
haven't
a-
discussed that
no,
yet.
you're on flex. That's coming up in about
Okay.
two bullets down. That is for students that are basically on the traditional calendar. And you're right, Ms. Corn, that's one of the reasons for this slide right here. Okay?
That's clear as mud.
Yeah. I understand that they would want remote learning plans because, so we did great, I think, but, across the state, I know. So now they want to be sure everybody's planning for, but this 5 days, that makes no sense to me.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
Sounds like the Jim.
Thank you.
I'll
Yeah.
say that comment.
All right.
And our teachers are going to be under such pressure when they come back, especially those elementary, because
Oh.
they're going to have to go back and teach everything the kids have missed to build on. And foreign language and math are going to have to go back in high school and build on everything they didn't get. And I mean, we're just putting more pressure on
And the
teachers.
fourth grade, they got a test in the first
Oh, I
10
know.
days.
I know.
That's all the General Assembly. And I think we'll move to the next item.
I'm happy.
Next is going to be construction update, Dr. Bryant. Make us happy.
Take Raleigh out of my mind.
Hot mic.
I would like to share some of the most positive news you will hear.
This is like lemonade.
Exactly. This is the lemonade with extra sugar as it relates to. So what happens when you close schools unexpectedly and you had planned to be working in those schools while kids were there? What you're able to do are things that you never thought you'd be able to do well ahead of schedule. And I want to say on behalf of our partners with the county and all the various firms that we're working with, probably the most exciting part about this is simply the fact that I've never been in more construction meetings where we talk about being ahead of schedule, right? It has been really exciting to be able to open our doors in ways that we didn't think possible when these schedules were set. And so I want to give you an update about what's taking place across our school system. One of the most visible construction projects, of course, that we have taking place is that on the campus of Hendersonville High School. So if you were to drive by right now, especially if you drove down Oakland, you'd see that the demo of the old gym is nearly completed, that there's significant foundation work that's going on where the new building structure will be, where the new band, chorus, the shop, and the auxiliary gym. You'll see the erection of scaffolding around Stillwell. The brickwork, the repointing of that work is the tuck pointing is going to be taking place now starting May the 18th. This is work that was scheduled a year from now. But we're able to do this work because we know that it has to be done, and better than delay this work, this is a perfect time for us to do it. We don't expect that we, of course, would be using that facility for any direct purpose until August, as Mr. Caldwell was talking about. Yes, sir.
Done with the repointing by then?
I'm sorry.
They'll be done with the repointing.
They're going to be done with some phase of it at that point.
Some phase of
Yes,
it.
sir. So
Okay.
ideally what will happen if everything stays on schedule, they will finish the entire, east and west side and the front, if you will, all of that work. And the only part that would be left to do is kind of the back side
Back,
of
yeah.
Stillwell. Yes, sir.
Cool.
So they'll be working their way around. A lot of it, of course, is dependent on, again, what they find when they start taking that mortar out and repointing the brick and what have you. But for us to be able to approve this part of the work schedule was a huge step forward for us. In the same way that when we handed the gyms earlier, we were able to move forward from there. There are a couple of great shots here. What you'll see, of course, the demolition space. You can see the significance of the foundations and the retaining walls. If you drive down 25, You'll also notice that you can really kind of see the parking lot coming to shape.
Mhm.
You can see the tiers of how that works. Again, I don't think anybody fully appreciated the grade of that
Oh,
property
it's crazy.
until you started to see them working on it when the Boyd facility was demoed. But you can really kind of start to see the tiers to the parking area that will start to occur in that facility. You'll also note here, these are interior shots of what used to be the concession area in the lobby of the 74 gym, or what we call in education world, the new gym. The girls' locker room on the lower level. Again, notice the floor down there. And then what used to be the Pardue floor, you can notice down there is covered up as they are doing that kind of work. This was maybe the most critical move that allowed us to move forward on this project. Again, if I had to say that there was a silver lining, this board approved a project that said we would have no gym use on that campus for a solid school year. The fact that we were able to kind of turn that over has given us 90 days or so
Uh-huh.
to tackle that schedule, so that the intent was to hand it back for what we hope will be a traditional graduation ceremony in 2021. And so our ability to do this really allowed the construction firm to really move ahead. And so we're excited about this work. I can tell you that every time I'm on the campus, it just really, I'm glad to see them doing critical work when it's not infringing on student learning, that it's not a disruption to that campus. And so as much of that as can occur as possible is going to be really critical for us.
Can you go back one slide?
Yes, ma'am.
I have
I'd
a
be glad to.
question.
Mhm.
The concession stand picture, is
Mhm.
that like the doors are right there and then you go straight into the gym this way? Is that? how
Yeah,
that-
you'd be taking a left. Yes, ma'am. So it'd be like if you kind of walked in those doors and you look to the left, that's what
Okay,
you're
that's
looking
what
at.
I thought.
concession stand. Oh,
That's
yeah.
correct. Yeah.
Wow, that looks so much bigger.
It really does. And when you think about how those spaces are going to be reworked again,
Mhm.
really exciting opportunity for us moving
Yeah.
forward. You see the considerable new building areas here. This is new building area A and B. I think it has been especially fascinating that when you drive down Oakland right now to really sort of see how those buildings are going to articulate with each other. When you see Stillwell there sort of by itself, it illustrates what that structure looks like and how it's going to interact with the new one as they move forward. And
Dr.
so-
Brian, I have a
yes,
question.
yes, sir.
I heard that stone from the old gym is being stored at Jackson Park by the county. What's going on with that?
That's correct. So what they were able to do was we have, as you may remember, in part of the project, some of that stone is going to be repurposed from the monumental sign, which will be essentially at what I would call the corner of 25 and Oakland.
Okay,
All right, that's where the monumental sign, and as a way of showing homage to the original structure, that stone's going to be used there. But they salvaged a lot more than that. And what they did was they decided to store it off-site right now so that it could potentially be used for future projects or otherwise, maybe even may have made it available to people in the public. Right now it is not. It's not for people to ride by there and pick up. We've had lots of people that have asked about it for
bet.
mementos. What we did do, you may remember, is we were able to cut up the entire old gym floor. We got far more than we thought we'd be able to because it was actually kind of tongue and groove, and we were able to just kind of pop that floor right up without having to rip a bunch of it up. And so the Alumni Association is now in ownership, if you will, of that, and they're going to be making mementos
Good.
that can be purchased to support the school and their programs moving forward.
Going to be in conjunction, Patrick Gallagher is doing a history of the old gym.
Yes, sir. I think he's been doing quite a bit of history work here, if I'm
Yeah,
not
I think
mistaken.
he's
Yeah.
spent a lot of time with Ms. Johnson.
Yes, sir. Yes, there are no finer people to spend time with than Ms. Johnson. So, but again, if you haven't driven by and look, it's one of those things where if you find time, I think as a board member, to ride by, even if it's a little bit out of your way every couple of weeks, because you see so much
Oh,
happening.
there's a wall.
Oh, absolutely. There's a wall, and a considerable one. When you
Big
think
wall.
about, when you see where the demo of the old gym is and how much of the footing had to be poured, there was work that was only going to be able to be delayed until the gyms could be handed over. And so again, we
You can see
continue.
that walkway now starting to take place. It's going to be between the new gym and where the school's going to be. It looks, you can start to visualize it a little bit better.
Yes, sir. Not to mention, we have been fortunate, even though I think it maybe has added to the stress of the closure period, but we've had gorgeous weather, and gorgeous weather. And yeah, without knocking on laminate here, has allowed, our project work to really continue. And so we hope that will move forward as we continue to progress. You can see a couple of other shots. Again, you see the demoing work that was taking place on the outside of the gyms, how much square footage is being cleared on that site. Edneyville Elementary School, lest we forget, remember, phase 2 of that construction project was scheduled to take place in the spring, which was really about finishing what is the front entrance of the school. When you think about coming in off Pace Road, you can kind of imagine where we are in the shot on the right, that you're looking toward the school at this point. You see that large area that's been graded for what will now become the entrance parking for the general public. So they're finishing the curb and guttering, the storm draining. They're installing the sidewalk canopies, parking lot lighting, and the like. You'll even notice the monumental sign on the front of the entrance. If you remember at our ribbon cutting, that sign was not yet up. That lettering, those are like about 16-inch letters that are on top of the main entrance canopy. So that work's happening right now. It's going to be exciting. We hope to be finishing that up really in the next couple of weeks. As long as the paving schedules stay on pace, we'll be able to finish that project, and the front entrance will be eligible for use moving forward. Again, silver linings. It's allowed what was, of course, a very unique parking and entry situation for those students while it was temporarily being built to really not be much of a circumstance. They were only in school for about 2 months before the closure period happened at that time. So Edneyville's finishing up. Yes, ma'am.
Where is that lettering? Like when you're looking at the school here?
It's
Is it
kind
all
of
the way
dead.
to the right?
Yeah, it's dead in the middle. You see where you can see the little bit of yellow in the picture on the right?
Yes.
It's just above that.
Oh, okay.
So that is
right
the main
there.
entrance to the
Okay.
school, and it's right
So
there.
there are the cars going to circle in like
They'll,
to where
yes,
that-
ma'am. They'll come in off Pace Road if you imagine on this side. And it's a lot like, I'll describe it kind of like Sugarloaf's parking lot is right now. So you come in and you have a designated bus entry on
Uh-huh.
one side, and you have car rider traffic and generalized parking on the other.
Oh, okay.
And
And
Nice.
those bricks are safe for buying or whatever.
Yes,
those-
ma'am.
Okay,
Mhm.
good.
And so this schedule moved up forward probably about,
No, this pretty much stayed on schedule.
This was
This
stayed-
one's really just kind of, it was about when the weather is allowed for paving, when they started making asphalt, when they could get out there and do that kind of work. Because this one was not dictated by kids being in school, it really hasn't changed. It's just not made, it hasn't inconvenienced the community, if you will. Mhm. As you take a look at this backside again, you see that the awning is up now for the entryway. You can imagine folks getting dropped off and being able to walk up to the main entrance here. Again, this was not constructed at the time of the ribbon cutting. This is the gym off to the left. So we all kind of walked in from the temporary parking lots here and went in the front entrance. All of this is going to be where the car rider loop is.
Yeah.
Really beautiful. And I know Mr. Caldwell would be proud of this. Oftentimes, awnings would be one of those things that would get VE'd out of a new school project. Again, we were really adamant and really pleased that this project really held to its budget, so we were able to keep those things in. I mentioned a little bit earlier, one of the projects that's been ongoing and one that we were able to turn loose at a level that could not have happened was this HVAC work. And what that really meant was, remember, when we went to the Board of Commissioners and we asked for emergency funding to be able to tackle these projects, we were talking about a complete replacement of an original system that was well beyond its useful life. And so at this time, we've demoed the ceiling tiles and grids. They're doing the ductwork and dealing with the air handlers. They're installing the mini split units. We've completed the rooftop units, and then they will be working to reinstall the ceiling grids. And the reason that I say that this could not have happened with kids involved is because these are classrooms. If you look at what this is right now, this work was going to be scheduled to happen at night and on weekends, and then sort of re-put back together, if you will, when kids would show up. Well, here's all their stuff in the hallway right now. You look at that left picture, we were able to empty entire hallways of the school, allow them to go in, demo the whole hallway without ruining anything, and then they can go in and work without having to put everything back. And we're not moving furniture 6 times to get a space completed. And that has been really, really beneficial for us. You can see the grids taken out in the hallways. You can see the grids taken out in classrooms. And so that project is advancing at a clip that it was going to take about 1.5 years to do all that work,
That translate to any
That's what I was going to ask.
Potentially, because we know that there was cost escalation built into that. The initial part of the work that's been done was all the part that was originally budgeted for now between, but I think we should expect to see cost savings moving forward, as they tackle those projects.
Big units on the top of the school at Rugby, at least, are being noticed. I've been asked, I don't know how many times, what in the world are they doing putting those big things? So
Mhm.
it's getting.
People know we're working.
Yep.
That's good. Absolutely. The next picture you see here is just a quick little update. The court on the left is West Henderson High School. If you are a tennis aficionado, I would just say to you, go check it out because those courts look like they're brand new right now. And I'm pretty excited about that because this was a project, and I'll correlate it to much about what we've talked about with capital outlay previously, is this is a kind of project that's never going to rise to the top, right? For years and years and years and years, it was never important enough to spend, $40,000 a set on resurfacing those courts. But if you don't do that, then that gets more and more and more expensive. And so the court on the right's North Henderson High School actually should be done probably this week or next. And then we're going to be able to have both sets of tennis courts that exist on our campuses in what is essentially near new condition, which is pretty exciting for our student athletes because if they were in school right now, that would not have been able to be accomplished. It would have still been kind of being scheduled while they're working. And so
there's some physical education classes that have used those too.
Yes, sir. Most definitely. I know that when I'm at Apple Valley and North, I don't think I've ever seen a time when the PE departments aren't using those courts. If you're outside and the weather allows. And so the nice weather has really allowed us to tackle these particular works. And then you're looking at West Henderson.
Just a minute. Just a little, be sure institutional memory takes place. Back in the day, schools had to raise their own money to actually build tennis courts.
Yes, ma'am.
So it's nice to see that the county is putting forth the money to upkeep them.
Absolutely.
Future reference.
And we appreciate that level of support because that's the same kind of thing that often would happen, like with resurfacing a track. I know that when I was an athletic director, now 16 years ago or what have you, when you were having those conversations, it was you had to raise the money.
And as we did.
Yeah.
Yes. And raising $90,000 is no small feat. So for us to be able to do that kind of work is exceptional. You'll see here softball lighting systems, these are the ones that we talked about again with capital outlay. I love the picture, the cloud pictures are really gorgeous here.
Yeah.
I credit Kent Parent, Director of Capital Projects, for the photo credits here. The one on the left's West Henderson High School. You can see that lighting pole systems are up and installed. Same thing at East Henderson High School. And we're waiting for the final hookups at each of those from Duke Power. The power meters have been installed and the ground lines have been laid. As soon as they activate those systems will be up and running.
Did those two fields have restrooms?
No, ma'am, they do not.
And nobody has Title IX'd us on that?
No, ma'am, not yet. Now, we also talked about what continues in that MRTS money. Well, it was everything that was under contract. One of the things that we got under contract almost immediately, as soon as that MRTS money was approved, were paving contracts, but that paving was not scheduled to start until the spring, till the weather really allowed it. So we were under contract, but none of the work was being done. It was scheduled to start as soon as they started making asphalt again. So here you can see what's going to happen. West Henderson High School, there are 3 areas specifically that are going to be receiving new asphalt and repaving. You'll see East Henderson High School. Similarly, there is work being done there, and Rugby Middle School. Note there at the bottom, that work started as early as today. So you may see some folks out there doing that work. They may ask you about that as well, Ms. Korn. Yes, sir.
And that does include like your striping, and then if y'all want to change things around, this is the time that they can change it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. If it's necessary. School safety update, just to kind of keep you looped in, because there's a lot of stuff that happens inside the building that's not visible. Access controls was one of the critical elements of some of the work that you had approved in the school safety dollars from previously. We've got new installations as well as phase 2 installations. Phase 2 meaning, so now we're beyond the main entryways. We're talking about perimeter doors so that building staff are able to access and use the control panels the way that they would say at a high school. When you're at a high school campus, those perimeter doors are the ones that are all on the access controls. So Hendersonville Middle, Rugby, Flat Rock, and Apple Valley, we're looking at perimeter doors, and then phase 2, that's all complete. We're doing upgraded work at Hillendale Elementary and Mills River to upgrade their fob system, again, so that they're able to utilize the access controls, and then new installations at Glen Marlow and Etowah. So that work's happening. Again, that's critical to our school safety initiatives, but it should be noted, that's one of those things that's not really ever seen. You never know that it's happened. You just know when it's working and when it's available to us.
And this was all under contract anyway.
Yes, sir. That's correct. Additionally, security camera upgrades. So one of the things that we're able to learn, as you heard me talking about in the capital outlay slides, is now that these ceilings were demoed out of our Flat Rock and Rugby Middle School, we were able to contract with MB Haynes to make sure that we were putting all the cabling in while these ceilings were out. We'd not planned on doing that because they weren't going to be out the way that they ultimately were, but we realized a considerable cost savings to the tune of about $75,000 to do that work while everything was out. They weren't having to, mobilize work, remobilize work, take a ceiling out, put it back in. So we went ahead and we're doing all the cabling right now, so that once those ceilings are put back in, that phasing of security cameras that we talked about, again, this is the coordination that when you have a director of school safety, a director of capital projects, and everybody talking at the same time saying, what are we trying to accomplish? How do we make sure that we're using our dollars? And they're having those conversations so regularly that as the world changed, we kind of stopped and said, all right, how can we take advantage of this? Empty buildings allow us to do things a little bit differently. So,
So was this budgeted, or is this something that
so
you
this
found
was
some
this was
savings?
budgeted money, but now we're able to spend that money on something else. So, for example, we're able to actually put the cabling in and install the cameras rather than just put the cabling in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good planning.
Yes.
That's wonderful.
So kudos to those folks. School intercom upgrades, again, not sexy, but critical work. It's important that we have systems that operate and systems, again, that work and work well. We've completed all the intercom upgrades that were part of our capital schedule. That's Apple Valley, Flat Rock North, and Sugarloaf Elementary School. And if you've been in a school, you know how important the intercom system is. And then, of course, just to remind the folks, as it relates to the MRTS money, we were prepared to go to contract on Upward. We were prepared to go to contract on Rugby Middle School. All the design work was finished. All the reviewing of the scope was finished and approved. And those are on hold and will await further guidance in order that we'd be able to
There's
move
some
forward. on
bids
those.
already in on that. Had you got some?
Oh, yes, we had already accepted the bids. So we had
Bids were
identified,
A little higher than we expected.
they were, yes, sir.
Will this
Mine
help
was
us now?
double.
Will your construction costs go down?
You know, I'm not sure, Coach Wood. I think it's a really good question. I know that when the economy is not booming, as it was in the middle of March, we tend to see construction prices go down. We tend to get more for our dollar. But I think we'll have to kind of wait and see how things go. Obviously, as we look into the future, we're going to evaluate that and we're going to look at what the value is for us and make sure that we're being good stewards of those dollars. Yep. With that in mind, that's all I have to present. Are there any questions about anything that I've shared with you, or would anybody like another pour of lemonade while I'm here?
Thank you, Dr. Bryant.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Mr. Sosha, financial statements.
Pictures of construction, that's
Yeah.
for sure.
Let's figure out how we pay for it.
Got some catch up to do since we didn't get to talk last month. So you get a whole page of them. So we have our local operating budgets as of April 30th, where we have now received basically all of our revenue for the year now that we get it differently from the county. That's why there's a discrepancy there. So we're up to 29.9 million in revenues, where expenditures are just at 22.9. And as we're tracking our expenditures, we are at 73.8% of where we anticipated to be, which is a little bit below where we were last year. We've sort of been talking about that this year as we've gone along, that we started the year with not knowing what was going on in Raleigh, so we were kind of hesitant to do a whole lot, and then the spring happened, and so it's been sort of an interesting year from that perspective as far as tracking is concerned. And we're not sure if we're going to see all of our revenues this year, the remainder. Our fines and forfeitures with the court systems being closed has diminished our revenue from that. So we're probably going to be down a little bit of money in there.
Are we still
And-
getting ABC money?
We're still getting ABC.
That's-
They're an essential
To be doing
business.
just fine.
I bet that's going up.
Not beer production.
And we did get word that the Medicaid money, at least some of that, is supposed to be coming to us shortly. So when I wrote this, we weren't getting it, and now Just today, we got a memo saying we're supposed to be getting it. So hopefully that'll help us with that's our EC budget there, some of that money. Capital outlay fund, as you can see, we have received our revenue, and we are $1,200,000 has been paid on the projects that Dr. Bryant just went over with you. We have $400,000 remaining on that $1.5 million of the primary project list for the current year. Our enterprise funds are a little interesting because this goes through the end of March only. We haven't gotten everything yet through the end of April. So halfway through March, we stopped really getting any money, but we continued to operate. So what we're looking at here is that we are showing a little bit of a deficit in those programs. But what I want to point out to you is that with all of the different pots of money that we're going to be getting, particularly the $440,000, we're going to use those dollars to make these programs whole as we get the guidance on the rest of the
It's
dollars.
probably the least worried I've ever been about both of those programs in the last 4 years.
Yes. So while they show in the red, what we're going to do is we're going to move a lot of those expenses right out of those programs into state
Yeah.
budgets.
So I'm not worried about those.
And we're supposed to be getting money anyway.
That's
They-
what we're
Right,
doing.
yeah.
That's the
in
point.
general. Yeah.
Yes. And we've
But a
received
lot of
different,
it's going to go to this, to the child nutrition program, and
right. And we've had
childcare.
donations that have come in for both of those programs.
Right.
And it's wonderful. I'm just trying to put all the pieces together to make sure we maximize our use of all those dollars. That's all of them for you, folks.
How do you feel we're going to be on the local current compared to your budgeted amount? We're going to be, how close are we going to be?
We're going to use some of that fund balance.
How much?
Actually, well, depending on how we can use those state dollars, maybe 300,000.
On the low end? Give me a range here. So 300,000 on the low end, on the high end?
500,
And we have what in fund balance?
2 million.
Cutting it close. Hopefully we can use some of the funds that are coming from the state to cover some of those expenses.
Exactly.
And some of those dollars, but we won't know anything until we know something. So hurry up and wait.
Got it.
Does anybody have any questions?
No.
All right, thank you, Mr. Socia.
Thank you much.
All right, let's get into some fun stuff. We've got a couple more things on the agenda. It's been a long meeting today. These next couple are probably some of the most important. Everything's important, but this one is the COVID-19 implications on the school flex calendar. Mr. Bo Caldwell, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Craven. I just want to talk, number one, I just left you about August the 17th for all children. And this case is this flex, and that's what we're going to discuss today. I have been honored, when you get a telephone call and a gentleman starts talking about your valued leadership and how much we appreciate what you're doing, something's coming.
How much
What do you
time?
want? What committee am I on? I've now been selected to work on a state committee for reentry. What is it going to look like for our children? And right now it's going to be very interesting to be on that committee because right now I don't know. You start reading.
Wear your shirt?
Yeah, I wear my shirt because you start reading all the things that people are putting out there and what it could look like. And 6 feet here and teachers here and students have got to have social distancing. And is every kid going to wear a mask? All of these types of things. And the thing that to me as superintendent, I want to bring to this committee is, number one, when we get them there, where are they academically? And we certainly don't want to start with testing. I know, Ms. Corn, that kind of sets some hairs on your neck there when all of a sudden the first 10 days. But we need to know where they are academically because some have been working really hard and maybe some, as Ms. Kay said, have not done much over the 7 weeks, and we've tried. But where are they also socially? Where are they emotionally? I think that we're going to have to deal. That's just also some of the re-entry that we're going to have to look at. So what about flex schools? I'm bringing to you as superintendent, once again, just a message that superintendent, I do not if we can, I do not want to start that school virtually.
Mm-mm.
Because I just feel like Dr. King did a tremendous job, and if everybody keeps bragging on her, she'll want a day off or something. But the issue that I have is I think it was so successful because of the student-teacher relationships that were already in place.
Yeah.
Kids knew their classmates, teacher knew their students. So they continued those one-on-ones, and they probably knew that little J needed some extra help because they worked with little J for so many times, and J needed. Excuse me, I just pulled out a name. But anyhow, you understand what I'm saying. And now trying to start kindergartners off, not even knowing much about school, or fifth graders all of a sudden not knowing his peers and his or her class, plus not having that teacher relationship. I just feel like that. Number one, of course, is you say, well, as people on the flex schedule, when can we start? Well, once again, I joke, but unfortunately, saying seriously, I don't know, because we just said on August the 17th is going to be a start date, but that's on the books. But right now, nobody has told me that's truly going to be official, and can we start that day? So I would like to bring to you as superintendent a recommendation that at least we bring this back up in June. That if all of a sudden we get that they can start in mid-July in person, then we delay the schedule. Or if it looks like that we can't and they have to be August, then they follow on the same calendar. I'm not asking for a final decision, but I would just like some discussion with the board on my recommendation not to all of a sudden say, we're going to start this in July, at the 1st of July, and we're going to start it virtually is what I wanted to bring to you today.
I'd like to go ahead and start this conversation. First of all, I got a wonderful, super smart, young little boy named Xavier John at home. He's eagerly anticipating starting kindergarten. And I could not imagine if we had to start online to start kindergarten. That just blows my mind. And 2 of my kids are on the year-round schedule. I've got a soon-to-be second grader and a kindergartner, like I said, and I've got an 8th grader at Harrisville Middle on traditional schedule. Even though that creates some hecticness at times, my wife and I love the year-round schedule. It seems to fit in with the learning loss and being able to take vacations at different times, and it seems to really capture their attention. They're there for 9 weeks and they got a couple weeks off. It makes for some interesting child care situations, but we make it through. My opinion, and it's probably not going to be a popular one, but my opinion is that we have a lot of unknowns that are going to happen this year. We don't know what kids are going to have to wear, or how you're going to space them 6 feet apart, or A through K can come on Monday and M through Z on this. We have no idea. And I think it's smart to just eliminate one of those right now. When do we start year-round school? Where you're supposed to start July 8th. We know that's not going to happen. July 9th, sorry. We know that's not going to happen. So my recommendation would be is to not wait until June, not try to, let's go ahead and let parents know about this now, and have one school calendar for the year. We're going to a traditional or a new COVID calendar or whatever you want to call it, because we're starting a little bit earlier anyways, and you have one single calendar. Now, this doesn't affect 21 of our schools, it only affects 2 of our schools. It affects Bruce Drysdale and Harrisville Elementary. And I truly believe it would behoove us to eliminate one of those concerns and just have one message that we're getting across to parents and to families right now. Because I don't know the difference. If you tell me I can't start July 9th and I could start July 30th, what's the difference in those 15 days that's going to make any difference anyways, between year-round and traditional calendar? There's a lot, it mushes together. So I know it's not going to be super popular, but it's where we're at. So that's kind of my opinion on it, my take.
Mr. Caldwell, can you think of any unintended consequences if we decide to do that?
The only unintended consequences Mr. Craven said would be due to the fact of the unknown, that all of a sudden they did say that they could start in person mid-July. then you could keep the flex as a modified flex, and they would get 2 weeks off versus 3 weeks off. But then,
Well, I don't think you could do that though, not with my math. You would have, well, mid-July would be the very next week, right? Because if we're starting
Right.
Thursday the
yeah,
9th.
it's our weeks. So yeah, it's really, that's the only thing is if they say that we could start, you would have to come up with some type of modified schedule. And I'm not saying weeks or breaks in the middle. I'm not sat down and truly looked at the math. I mean, you could go ahead and say it's August the 17th. That's what this board wanted to do. And if we're going to get in person, we can get in person.
If we did that, I would want to reiterate that this would be a 1-year plan only, and that we would come back and have year-round the following year. I don't necessarily want to do this, but I do think it's in the best interest of really everyone involved here, dealing with all of these unknowns that we have. And we've got another parent of year-round kids. I mean, I love it. I know you.
And I do. I have, I'm going to have 2 girls on that schedule next year, a kindergartner and a 3rd grader. The only other option I would see would be, because I don't think we're going to be able to, I could be wrong. I don't think we're going to be able to start in July at all. But like Mr. Caldwell and I were talking last week, you know, if we were able to and started Monday, August 3rd, that would give year-round they could take 2 1-week breaks, like so a fall 1-week break, and then add on to spring break and make that 2 weeks. So you'd have a fall 1-week break, a 2-week Christmas break like traditional, and then 2 weeks in the spring. I mean, that would give you 2 extra weeks to take off, but I don't think we're going to be able to start that early.
Yeah, I just think with all the unknowns, you're adding more unknowns.
Right, and parents don't know what to do.
At what point do you say, just scrap it and listen, we can't do it this year. We keep adding all of these what ifs. I would love to know, hey, my kid's starting on this date. Not, well, let us get back to you in a month, and then maybe we're going to subtract these days, and we might have to move something over here, and then maybe, just joking, you start August 1st. It's just a lot.
If we do this, how will this affect our ability as a year-round school system to get the calendar we want in 21?
You can't have that anyway.
Well, that'll be another
Change that.
discussion. Yeah.
And I think Dean kind of alluded to that a little bit.
Yeah.
We'll discuss that for their new laws. Now, I'm hearing that there's going to be maybe a 4th definition that will come out of the session where they approve it or not. So that one, I think, for this will just be a one-time temporary, because if they say that we can't open, we can't open. And I think the issue, Mr. Craven, is what he's saying is which is true, is parents are going to call us every week or text every week. Can we open up next week? Can we open up next week? I think.
And then there's a daycare issue. They need to get their kids in a camp if we're not going to open at all in July.
Well, the camps probably won't work if we can't open
They're
school.
probably not going to be.
No, they've already approved summer
camps
camps. They
do.
can open. I know.
Even night camps, overnight?
Day
No, I don't
camps
think
are open.
overnight. It's day
Day
camps, like the
camp.
YMCA can open.
Right.
Yeah.
So-
I don't know how they're going to do that, but
I want to hear from the rest of the
Yeah.
board. I know you guys don't have kids in this system. This affects about 900 or so students and their families, I believe, somewhere around there, 1,000. Any other things that we haven't looked at or I haven't looked at or thought about?
Yeah, the only opinion that I have that I've talked to a couple staff people that does work in the year round, their concern is about pay. So hypothetically, we do change the schedule. How would that affect their pay? Because that adjusts their contracts, from their normal time.
What percent of those teachers, though, get their pay for 12 months? I mean, they all get 12 months, so it doesn't really.
So we could stretch them to 12 as well, right? Instead of a 10-month.
We just
contract.
adjust it or
I mean,
something.
all teachers can get 12, check. for
But
every-
that was just the
They're all on 12. Right.
Yeah, so
So that wouldn't affect
that
them.
shouldn't affect.
I think once you make a decision, those are the type of details that we'll
That
work
you can
out.
figure
I
it
don't
out.
want to say, I mean, they're not going to lose money.
That's what they're worried about.
Well, they'll make the same, money,
Now-
I mean, because the contract's not going to change. It's
Right, they still get the same amount.
right.
And then those same couple, and then a couple of other parents too, is they said they rather know now
Yeah.
than later, because if they can plan their vacation, if they can go on vacation in July, they'll go ahead and plan a vacation in July versus,
I think
trying
that's
to figure
right.
out
The sooner we can
intersection.
let them know for that.
We
name this
can't
thing
sit on
got
this. This is
canceled.
something we can't wait till the June meeting or something. I hate to make a cut and dry decision right now, maybe give people a week or two to, chew on it. I don't see another option.
Year-round starts July 9th,
Yes, sir.
right? And I'm very simple-minded, so you gotta help me out. But what if could year-round start August 17th?
That's what we're
Yeah,
saying.
that's-
No, not everybody on the traditional schedule.
Oh.
Year-round start.
Well, you're already losing some
Well,
of
that's
this.
what
You're
I'm saying. I
losing
mean,
5
is there
weeks.
any
How
way-
would you do that?
Because
It would year-round would start later and would
And
end
later?
later, but
Through
it'd still
June,
be
no.
Year-round.
I think the problem is, I think this year is going to be, like Mr. Caldwell said, the re-entry into school is going to be, what are we doing? How are we doing it?
Okay,
And I
well,
think, how do we get kids on buses and
And the
that sort of
second
thing?
thing is if it's on traditional and it ends in June, you're gonna start school again year-round?
We
You
end
can
at
always
the
do it
same time
anyways.
anyway. We
They do.
all schools end on the same day except for early
Most of
college.
the time, they end about 1 week earlier.
See,
No,
Year
at the
round.
last 2 years, we've done them. Mhm.
Okay.
We've done them the
Year-round
same.
usually, What, go 3 months and then have,
No, you get
9
9 weeks,
weeks.
3 weeks, 9 weeks, and then there's a little bit of a weird thing with Christmas, and then you get a couple weeks, and then spring break. But those calendars were moving in the same direction.
What was the last day of school this year?
June
The
If
5th, and next year,
Around, it
Yes.
was also June.
and next year it's the 4th
Okay,
for
so
everybody
Okay, so
too.
you-
Basically, same thing.
I love year-round. I mean, my kids were year-round, but you know what? Charlotte, our third, Atkinson, we did year-round. I mean, and in my opinion, who else is a lot of year-round? Wake?
Wake has you.
Most of the,
Okay.
But theirs is a whole different,
Year round, yeah.
But the point is, how many schools in Wake are year-round?
I couldn't even imagine.
I mean,
There's-
sounds
more
to
schools than
me-
we
There's going to be a
have.
decision made pretty soon on
It
where those.
sounds to me like year-round, either needs to be year-round, or, I mean, 2 out of 23 schools are year-round? I mean, come on.
Hey, you're not taking that away. That's not even a
I'm just
conversation for
saying,
right
I
now.
mean,
hey, I'm all for making
Anyway.
all of them year round.
Yeah, me
I
too.
mean, I'm fine. That's what I'm saying. Either make them all year-round.
But for today's
But right now, we're
conversation,
not
I
talking
understand,
about
but,
that.
Yeah, let's don't go there right now.
Otherwise, our
August
phones are going to
17th.
blow up.
hold on. Let Jay make his point.
And that's all I'm just saying. If you want to start August 17th, that's fine.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that, because we need some concrete answers. We need to know, and we don't even know if that's a concrete answer.
Correct.
But
Right.
it's closer to maybe a concrete answer, closer maybe, I just think starting to back up, you might get some feedback, and that might be the end of year round.
But we're of course going to get
But
feedback.
August 17th is.
The
I
parents
think-
that love year-round love it. And you don't typically send your kid to Bruce Drysdale or Hendersonville Elementary if you don't love year-round schools. You just don't. My family is willing to deal with having. We had 3 schedules going into this year. We had my one kid in daycare and at Immaculata, and they had a whole another schedule for all the Saints days and everything. And then we have year-round school, and then we had traditional school. But we were willing to make that sacrifice because we really felt that, especially in elementary school, that year-round was the way to go. I really think if we need to think about simplifying things this year. We need to think about simplifying our budgets. We need to think about simplifying our capital outlays. We need to think about simplifying our calendars and everything else that we're doing. And to me, this is we could take some heat from it, but I think it's the smartest thing to do.
Virtual year round is
I totally agree with your original statement that would be awful if we had to start school
Oh.
virtually. I mean, awful.
Terrible.
But I don't see we really have a good choice. I mean, we have a choice, we could say, but I think it's a weird year and we're just gonna go with it. And if we get to start August 17th, then I'm counting on that for many reasons.
And
Hopefully that would just mean we can get back to lots of things, but I think that's the only decision that makes sense.
Yep.
If they tell us we have to start school virtually, well, then we don't have a choice. But right now, we are planning on starting August 17th. And I would hate to start our year-round virtual. And I also don't want to make those parents wait
Mhm.
for that decision. It's a moving target, we can tell them. And that's what I'm going to say later on a different discussion. It's, that's just not right. We need to make as fine, definite as we're allowed to make.
And I think the other point I know we haven't really talked about too much is the early college calendar, because Blue Ridge doesn't start until August 24th for fall. Why not adjust everybody to the same one so there's no question? Because what to say that they can go back on the August 6th?
What's
or
their
what?
date?
I don't have that calendar in front of me. And I think what I would like to do, Michael, is to bring that one up to you in June as well, because they don't start in, I think for this is critical that they're starting in July to make a decision. And we can bring
August
to you,
6th.
we can bring to you a calendar for the college in June as well.
Did they move their date?
They moved theirs to
Okay.
August 24th.
Okay.
I think let's focus on this flex calendar. Like I said, I think
It requires an earlier decision.
it does, because I mean, it's pretty close. So there's a couple ways we could do this. We could take a motion now and we could pass it, or we could punt it down the road and let the newspaper get a hold of it and get the emails and the calls and do all the thing. Or so I kind of want to get you. I think parents are going to be against it, but
In this room.
in this room, not I.
I don't think we have I don't think.
Is anybody against it, Ms. Case?
Not against it.
I am 100% against starting my child on a virtual calendar. I would move her from year-round school to a traditional school because it's not in her best interest. I mean, I think we've, as school systems, done a wonderful job, but she has a disability and she needs that one-on-one instruction. So
Have we talked to staff? Have we talked to?
I
I talked to the two administrators. I talked to both principals, and both principals agree with Ms. Holt that it's too much of student-teacher relationships to start any type of school, especially in elementary school, virtually. It might be a little easier in high school, but no, not in elementary school.
yeah,
And so therefore, that would be their recommendation would be for you to delay the opening until these students could get into the school on a face-to-face basis. And the question you have is what date will that be? I don't know. So therefore, it could be August the 17th. It could be later than August the 17th.
yeah, we don't know. We can't.
And
predict
so
that.
that's the question. But yes, they want to bring them back face-to-face, as Ms. Holt's saying.
And I had a teacher that said, I have been selected to email you. Everybody, all my peers here do not want to start virtually. They, and if that we're starting a reentry sooner than traditional, some of them had health concerns, like I take care of my mother who's older, or my child has a health issue, and we're scared. We would rather it be later, even though we love the year round.
I think we're all on the same board. I think the one thing I'm hesitant about saying right now, boom, done, August 17th, I think you do need to let parents, but also we're elected to make these decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we are.
And also, what you have to be cognizant of their vacation plans too, because I already had Disney reservations for September 20th. Yeah, so I'm gonna have to move those, so they need to know
I
that.
think we can, address that when we release this, is that we really don't want any of our schools to start school virtually. And
Right.
at this point, we've been given direction from the state that school will start August 17th. And therefore, we're going to start what has been our traditional year round at August 17th. The reason is so that we are as assured as we can be, it's not going to be virtual, and to let parents know that if you are allowed to make vacation plans,
Mhm.
you can go on and do that.
Right.
And for this 1 year
This is a
Yes.
only,
one-year thing.
we
Only
will
1 year.
all be on the same calendar.
1 year
Right.
only.
Excluding early college right now.
Well, I'd like you to bring that back to us as well.
And we'll bring that back to you 1st of June.
Well,
I'll make the motion. I move that the Henderson County Board of Education adjusts the flex calendar to be towards the traditional calendar for the 2021 calendar for only 1 year of change. If that makes
that
sense.
motion work, Kathy? To adjust the start date of the flex calendar to August 17th.
For 2020,
For 2021.
2021.
Is it the entire calendar?
Yes.
The traditional
Follow the traditional
calendar.
calendar schedule.
Yes.
Go ahead and make that again to follow. Do it one more time if you wouldn't mind.
I move that the Henderson County Board of Education adjust the flex calendar to the traditional calendar for the 2021 calendar year start date. Okay, and follow the calendar.
Do I have a second?
I think A on it. A on second.
All right. And any more discussion? All right, Ms. Case.
Fine.
Yeah, yes or no on the
Yes.
motion?
Oh, yes.
Ms. Corr?
Yes.
Coach Wood?
Yes.
Ms. Holt?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. We have just moved the start date from, for the flex calendar to August 17th to mirror the traditional calendar.
And they will follow the.
And they will follow the traditional calendar for 1 year only.
1 year.
We will get that out for parents ASAP through all of social media and also do some alerts
Yep.
with
Let's make sure that it's, Coach Wood was making a couple of good points here and just, we're doing this for a year.
Virtual.
Virtual is what we're trying to avoid to start.
You can,
Let's just make sure we,
yeah, and you can
If
make
there
sure
no-
that they have the chair and the vice chair's email address and phone numbers. All of ours has been disabled for 6 weeks.
I don't think it'll.
I know, they
They
understand.
see.
I know.
mean, they don't want their kids going to school in their bedroom on a computer.
Right.
Well, it's both ways. I mean, I had one parent that works for the clerk of court's office, and she said, "I'd rather my kid work online than
Well, we offer that
start
too.
later." But I mean, it's at the same time, it's
well, we've
What's
made the
best for
choice.
everybody.
The motion's in. Let's move on
Move
to
on.
F.
end of year
End of
activities.
year events
Yes,
updates.
and I think, Mr. Egoff, you said it best, it's not normal times, is it, my friend? And let me just kind of go through with you the end of the year operations or end of the year events that we are doing. I think if you haven't put on your schedule, I think this Thursday is the virtual Hall of Fame. So I think it will be shown to you at a certain time, so
I
please
think
make
it's
sure.
7.
7
Is that
o'clock,
correct?
I believe, 7 o'clock. So make sure you have that on your calendar. Mr. Rhodes is working on a virtual Teacher of the Year celebration. I'm not sure. I think he spit out a date today. Is it okay to say
The 22nd.
May 22nd? He'll release the Henderson County Teacher of the Year on that day virtually. We're going to work on a top scholars video.
Oh,
and-
nice.
And to work with those people virtually. And schools are also doing some other individual things, especially in the high school realm. I think when you all of a sudden start realize the end of the year season, with the athletic banquets and the military things that some of them do, and there's just on the different activities that our principals are handling to make sure that they do what they can do to celebrate all of these students. And then, of course, you've got graduation. And I know that you want to spend some time talking about graduation. And let me kind of tell you the plans that we have right now. Number one, we have a professional company creating a video. Some students have done their speeches. Principals have done their speeches. They're putting those videos together. When it comes time to honor the kids, a picture will go by of every child. So to make sure we included every child. And that was our whole goal, because if we started saying we're just going to film the kids who come back, some kids don't come back, they can't get back, we want to include all the children. The second thing that we're doing, of course, and I've heard this is the one that I think has created some talk, is the diploma ceremony. And I know people are calling it drive-through, drive-in. I'm calling it diploma ceremony, because our goal is that if we can't celebrate together, and I know some of the comments said we want to celebrate with our friends. And right now, what our plans are is what we know. Just in the last conversation, you made a decision on what you know. That's what these plans are, is what we know right now. And as far as the diploma ceremony, it's going to start at a certain time. A child can pull up. They'll be decorated at a certain area. The principal, the administration will be there. The child will get out of the car on the passenger side. They will do their ceremonial walk across the stage. There at the table will be their diploma and other honors that the child and school may give that graduate. And the principal is standing there and say, I now announce you a graduate of IE West Henderson High School. The child moves the tassel over. Grandma can take a picture. They can get out of the car, just as long as there's no more than, if they can get 10 people in that car. I mean, it's the issue is what they can do is they can be part of this process. They can celebrate there with that child. And that was our goal. Okay. And so that's where we know right now. This has been approved by by Steve Smith. I've talked to Steve. I said, Steve, I want to make sure I'm meeting all the guidelines. As of right now, he said yes, but of course the guidelines may change. And I think as a school board, you're more than welcome to talk about different ideas you heard. If you would like for us to change these plans, basically, this is just not the superintendent sitting in his office saying, let me see what I can do. I have talked to my leadership team. We have met as a group. This has been a group decision by principals, assistant principals, trying to figure out what we can do, what's best for children. Like I said, as a board, we can certainly talk about different things that we can do. The issue is right now, if I heard delay it. And as a Board of Education, if you would like for us to delay it, that is something that you more than welcome to discuss. The issue is what you just said, Mr. Craven, is what's the date for that? Nobody knows a date for that. And also, what is even going to happen on May 22nd? I know May 22nd, you have phase two's coming in,
Hopefully.
and therefore the restrictions for phase two going to be a little different. I think phase two could last 2 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. That would take 3 weeks. 3 to 4 weeks. So therefore 6 weeks. So therefore, or could we even wait till the middle of June? I mean, we might know more on May 22nd. This is where we are right now. I think when people says change your mind on the plan, I think they need to know from as a superintendent, this is not in concrete. If somebody would tell us tomorrow that I could get 300 kids together at the football field, we would do it. But right now we can't. And that's the only thing that I have to meet the safety guidelines and the health guidelines put out to me basically by our governor. And so I will just open up the conversation about graduation and go from there.
I'm gonna start here. And I want to say the first thing I want to say about graduation is that we have been talking about this as a board, as an administrative team, from day one of this whole tragedy. We have not forgotten about our seniors. We have not made light of the situation. We have been in constant communication to try to figure out what can we do. And I applaud you guys for coming up with some things that we can do right now to honor our seniors. And I know a lot of folks out there don't think that we're doing enough. Problem is, we're not allowed to do enough right now. So I think what we need to concentrate on is if this board decides to create a date of something additional later in the summer. And, I don't really want to run into next year on anything. I'd like to have it cut and dry this summer, if we decided to do something, but I am open to any recommendations because I do want to celebrate these kids, but we've got to do it in the right way. So I'll open it up. Ms. Corn or Coach Wood?
One question back to the walkthrough. Will they wear cap and gowns?
It is our intent for them to wear cap and gown.
Will they be required to wear them?
Coach, we're not going to, if a child pulls up and they're not in it, we're not going to tell them they can't. This is.
I'd rather it not be
No, I
required.
think the issue for us is we're doing this for a child to be able to walk.
Right.
There's things that when you read, number one is my child needs to be able to walk. When I have parents say this, they've waited for this time to walk. We can do that. If it's a cap and gown or whatever they would like to celebrate with their parents, their grandma, whoever wants to be there taking pictures, that's part of the process. The issue that, as Mr. Craven said, we can't is I can't let them walk right now with all 300 people right now.
What are we required to do? June 5th, is that the date, graduation?
June
date?
5th is graduation.
Don't we have to graduate them that
We
day?
eventually going to have to graduate. And I know that we hear people say, well, can you wait till October, November? That will be a ceremony because in Power School, we have to sign off that this child is graduated because some are going to go straight to the workforce. Some are going to go to the military. I'm not even sure about the military, if they're even starting at this or putting everything on hold. But the issue is once a child is graduated, they're going to scatter. And then when the doors are open, and when the doors are open enough for us, to have a full-blown graduation, they're also, I believe the doors will be open for other opportunities for these students. So I think that if we decide to postpone this, I think we got to be strategic enough to find a date that there's not going to be as many conflicts, and also, can we do it? And if we can do it, then how many kids will we have there? Because we have kids going everywhere. I saw a child that was from North Henderson going to school in Maine. And then I saw one West Henderson going to Texas. So therefore, I think, or something like, I mean, we got kids going everywhere. So
Could we go ahead with the plans that we have now for June 5th and not as a board or as a system set another date for celebration, but leave it up to the schools if they want to have some sort of
celebration for the students.
I don't think that's a good idea, just because I think that it needs to be the same for all schools. I think that we need to have a ceremony for these kids, period. I don't think that we're going to be able to get kids and the staff that's required to be there and their families there. I think that's out of the question. I don't think we're going to be able to have, if you think about, we have 300 students at per se school. They have 2 parents. That's, then you're up to 900. I mean, it's not happening. So I think we need to concentrate on doing a ceremony with just kids and staff and have parents seeing it live streamed, whether they're in the parking lot of wherever it's going to be or whether it's at home. Yeah. And these kids are together because that's what they want. They want to be together. That's what I keep hearing. That's what I keep reading, is they all want to be together.
But they can't be together.
Right now they can't, but I think in June.
We just made a decision that we are not going to start flex in July because we think we are not even going to be allowed to be together.
See, in phase 2, you can have 25% of the fire marshal capacity in a facility.
But social
I
gathering is not going to be more than
Is
50.
it still 6 feet?
Yeah, you could still do 6 feet, have them spaced 6 feet apart. There is a place that I have gotten approval on that I'm not going to say where it is right now. That all 300 kids and their staff would be able to fit in there. It doesn't fall above the fire marshal capacity of 25%. And that facility is able to live stream it out. And we
put the
could do
things in the
this.
driveway.
Yeah, we could do screens.
Parents
They
could
could
park in
watch
the
it on their
parking lot, they could
phones.
watch it there.
And they could do all 4 schools at the same time?
No, not at the same time.
Same
You
right
would
after.
have,
Space
yep,
them out,
you
2
could have
days.
them like, Thursday and Friday or Friday and Saturday or whatever. I just think for us to not even try is, it'll start March
Or May-
22nd. May 22nd.
And so, I mean, I guess you have to figure there that you trust them to do what they're supposed to do, but If
With
the
the kids.
idea is, I'm talking about the kids.
It's, yeah,
That's not.
that's not our.
But
Well,
idea.
at our graduation, it is in fact
did
our
us.
responsibility.
That's
Now,
right.
if they leave there and go party at the country
Right,
club,
we can't, yeah.
and that's being
Hugging
together,
and they're-
that's what,
yeah.
that's
Yeah.
being together.
They're
But
hanging
for
out right now.
graduation, you know,
Yes,
Well,
but we're
I
not
think-
responsible
That's
for that.
true.
I think that it would be like a
Sign waivers.
parents would have to sign a waiver. The kids would, I understand, I'm supposed to be
wow.
6 feet away
But
from
we're going to be
whatever.
held responsible.
So it's either we
But how
try
many
to,
kids have you seen, not that it can't happen, but how many kids have we seen reported at all that have had COVID-19 in our county?
Doesn't mean they're not going to.
Right.
A kid
but-
visits grandmother before we have it.
no.
let me ask a question. Do y'all think that the June 5th, what we have planned now is enough and then we should cut it off?
I do. I saw a similar situation on the news or somewhere, and it was really pretty cool.
They were very happy about it. I saw that
Well,
same.
And it's also this, when do you plan that?
So we could, I talked to a couple of teachers from North, which it sounds like they're going to have a pretty cool plan where they'll still have the stage and the kids still going to be able to come up on the stage to get their diploma. And then,
I think that's most people's plan.
and they'll have,
all of our high schools plan.
And the
Right, they're
parents
gonna
are
have
going
a
to be
stage.
there.
Right.
They're going to be closer than they would even be in a stadium or in a building or whatever, and they're going to be there. They can get a
But-
truck and haul 20 relatives
So
in the
do you
back of the
think we
truck.
should continue with the June 5th and then be done with it?
I don't know. I think I'm sort of thinking that if we have June 5th, those, and some of those kids are through with high school. I mean, they're through. They're not going to be coming back
No,
to
give
the
them our
schools
diploma and
later
gone.
on.
17-year-old Blair
But-
won't come back for a
but-
ceremony.
It's sort of appeasing to know that if seniors want to come back, in say September or during football and have a reunion of that senior class or something and have let the school have a celebration of them and, whatever at the football game or whatever. I'm not sold on that, but I do say we have to have that June 5th.
Why couldn't someone arrange that? Someone can arrange. it.
Right, the schools
We don't
could.
have to arrange it.
Right, no,
The
the
second
schools.
gathering?
Yeah.
Hey, they can do it if they want. If y'all want, I'm all for the June 5th because I wrote down here, problems of delaying. Well, there's no date. You don't know when you can. You got this going on, but does that put us liable? If a grandparent is there and takes a picture and then 5 days later comes down with a fever and a sore throat, are we liable? I don't know. Gets in the way of summer plans. You mentioned military, people going on vacation. Let me tell you what, when I was in June 5th, when I was graduated at Hendersonville, I was done. When I was going to Chapel Hill, I was still in the mind mode, in school mode, but I sure as heck, I was done with high school.
Yeah.
And I think when you delay it and you don't know a date when to return, which we've just decided we don't, unless we do it this way, but are not sure of our culpability or liability, our friends, classmates, guests might or might not be there. But if they want to arrange it, then that's fine. Let them arrange it. If they want to do the class president before they get out, say, hey, let's decide on a reunion tour or whatever when everything gets back, and let's have another. That's fine. Let them handle it. I just think you need to graduate on time. And I wrote down some notes here. By saying that, I don't want to be seen as taking something again away from the seniors. Blair said it. Senior play was a ball.
Right.
Move up was a ball. There are so many things that my senior year was awesome. I had my first 3 classes were physics, calculus, and advanced English. But after that, I had library, I had graphics.
Be on tape. We'll take it.
This is live streams. Can we discuss this?
So I don't want to take away. I took some hard classes in the morning. But I'm just saying, I'm not taking away. I don't want to
Jason's
take
watching.
away more from the seniors because they've had their life, school life has been taken away. I understand it, but it's just like we need to, create some more normalcy. Back into their lives. And if they can get a minivan, put 7 people in it, put their parents and grandparents, and put a tassel on and then walk across the stage and everybody gets pictures in there, that's a little bit of normalcy.
I will say we are doing a lot more than any of the universities are doing.
Mail it.
From Clemson to Chapel Hill to ECU just posted their virtual graduation ceremony online yesterday, the day before. So your point's definitely duly noted. You had something?
Yeah, so I mean, so I was watching, I even watched the chancellor's announcement for Western Carolina University because there was up in the air what they were doing. She's still planning on doing their virtual graduation, you know, putting a video up, and then she's already scheduled a second graduation in December for the graduates now. So, I mean, if it would please the public, we could always just do our thing that we're planning on doing right now for June 5th, unless something changes. And then plan a date in December, possibly do the connection that Amy has, or even talk to a couple of these churches and let them have a graduation. If they show up, they show up. If they don't, they don't. I mean, the only thing that you get on the stage is a hardcover diploma cover, which we have to order anyway. Type thing.
I hear basically what you're saying, Mr. Absher, is continue with what we have right now as of June the 5th, because that date has been circled on people's calendars since we put the calendar out. And plan some type of ceremony. I'm not sure I would want to do December, because you got to remember our gyms are small. Western Carolina has that huge.
Oh, I know. What I'm just saying, that's why we could
facility.
use.
Now you're right back to only limiting a certain number of tickets. I think the issue that I would like to do is I will know more in May whether I can get 300 together or not. I mean, they're running this sounds really crazy, but I heard that in Charlotte, they're running the Charlotte race
Motor
on May
Speedway.
on
No,
May
Pete, no spectators.
There's no spectators, but there's 600 people in the infield. So my question is,
Well, and that's where they're doing the graduation for that school district.
well, in cars, I think, yeah, to be honest with you, I have researched I can almost, you start naming a county and I can pretty well tell you what they're doing.
Stanley.
But Stanley, let's see. Okay, he caught me. I do know some of them are delaying it. I'll be honest with you. You can go through and some of them are delaying it. Some of them are saying that they're going to delay it till August. August the 15th, which is the Saturday before. And if you can't do August the 15th, then they're going to turn around and do it virtually. They're not going to delay it anymore. You've got some Bunkum who just put out theirs that they're doing the same thing that we're doing, except they are saying when they can get the kids together, there'll be a celebration of some sort. So they're not saying graduating, there'll be a celebration. They added a third part to theirs that we've not added to ours. It is all over. Jackson's delaying theirs. Polk is delaying theirs. You know, I think the issue for us is kind of Ms. Holt and I've talked. It is the beauty that what you do here is walking across the stage is one, we're giving them that, but it's being with their peers. And right now we're saying they can't do it. And it's not a Henderson County thing. It's the governor. It's the times we're in that we can't do it. Can they do it the second week in June? As Ms. Corn said, I don't know. Can we do it in July? I don't know. But I will tell you this, a superintendent, if things do change and we go from phase 2 and phase 2 is different than what we hear, then I'll be coming to you about wanting to make the change, because it is important for us these kids to celebrate together. It is so important. I think the issue that we have, and I've been struggling with, and my leadership struggling with, and principals struggling with, is do you delay it with the unknown as how long do you delay it, and or just say, we're working towards it. We'll do our best to get them together when we can. We'll continue with June 5th. However, we'll try to get them together when it's a possibility and see how it goes.
I like your wording there. I think graduation is June 5th.
Yeah.
I think adding an additional celebration doesn't hurt at all when we know we can have a celebration of whatever celebration sorts we can have. I think a lot of the things that you're going to see, a lot of the people that are delaying it, I think Polk County is delaying it, they're a lot smaller school systems.
He has 150. I talked
So
to him.
we're looking at like what there would be a minimum of 1,000 people per graduation. So you're looking at least 4,000 people that we're looking at maneuvering for graduation ceremonies in Henderson County. I don't think you should stop the June 5th. I think you should just go ahead and, a lot of kids just want their diplomas and let's go. There's a lot of Mr. Egoffs out there. I was one of those myself. And then we try to figure out, when we can figure it out, how do we do a celebration? My heartburn is having it go into December, having it go into this year, having it go into that
Well, what
year.
happens if you delay? You have to keep delaying and keep.
Well,
delaying.
no.
So you
That's
don't
why.
have one,
But a lot of
And June 5th is gone.
But a lot of the
Absolutely.
parents are even saying, if hypothetically we delay it, right? The biggest one, that big email that we all got, that lady said, hey, if we delay it and we're not able to do it, then okay.
That
But at
she
least we-
says, okay.
I know, but I'm
But
just
the
saying.
other ones aren't going to say, okay, my personal opinion, after listening to all this, June 5th, you graduate. After that, we figure out, we make a statement, we are going to celebrate our seniors when they can all get together, when the governor allows us. It's not going to be a typical graduation because this isn't a typical year. You're not going to get that. You're not going to get what your mom had, what your dad had, your cousin had. Probably not going to be like next year. But that's where we're at.
But you could also ask, for the senior president or the class president, that make sure you have a way of contacting all the individuals. Get a cell phone. Let's do what we can to promote it. But that's out of our hands, really. It's into their hands. Let them handle it or help us.
I would like to get that done before, if we can all get that celebration done before the school year starts. I think that'd be ideal, so you can have a fresh school year.
Can I ask you, as superintendent, just one thing, that if by some, because I know what you're saying is June 5th, but if for some reason I can get 300 kids together in one spot,
On June
if it's
5th?
approved by the health department, if
Do
it's
it.
approved by meeting all the regulations, and I'll go through every person, because I'm certainly not going to do anything that will put the school system in jeopardy. But if I can get it approved to get all 300 kids together by June the 5th, can I come to you and change those plans and not do the
Yes,
drop?
absolutely, without a
Okay.
doubt.
And that's, but that's,
Talk to a lawyer.
If you
Oh.
get a governor's order that says we can have a mass gathering of that many people by June the 5th, go change all the plans. Yes, go.
okay. And then if not, then what I'm hearing is continue with June the 5th, and then we'll have some type of celebration for kids at a later month.
And
But-
I would like to put out something to that effect as well. I'd like to get with Molly and have something put out.
Yeah, I think if we can gather these kids, and I'm thinking by everything that I've read, that we will have the capacity to gather, not them and their families, but gather those kids. I think that we are doing them a disservice if we don't do it, because it's hard. It's just, it's not fair to them. If we can do it, we need to do it.
I will certainly bring to you any opportunity that we have.
But otherwise, we're doing the drive-through on June 5th.
If
you
everything,
can't
if
get that.
if we've explored all opportunities to do what we can do, more
We've
than
got
what
3
we're doing.
weeks, right?
Yes.
So we've got 3 weeks.
And I think it's careful we don't call it,
Don't call it a
a
drive-through.
drive-by. That's
Call it
like
graduation.
throwing
I-
a diploma.
It
in
was
the
our,
window
it
as
was
you
our
go
intent to
by.
do a diploma ceremony. And then, of course, what happened is kids pull up, and when they pulled up, somebody was thinking that they don't even get out of their car.
Right.
Yeah.
They get to get out of their car. They get to walk
Right.
across the stage. And like you said, grandma and
Individual
mom.
But I still think we need to put
Graduation
that out there.
Right.
Put more details of it
Well,
out there.
details.
so
But
where-
even Blue Ridge did for their nursing program,
Pinning
they did a
ceremony.
pinning and people were in their cars. I mean, they do need to get out and walk. I'm not changing that.
I would
But that
highly,
was nice. They
highly
did a good job.
recommend that the schools do like North's doing and make a stage and make it as elaborate as they can and make it as grand as they can. And if we need to find some extra funding to help with that, then let's do that.
You know these schools are going, we already
Yeah,
have.
I know they
teachers
will.
doing- getting
They're
in their
gonna go-
Cars and big parades through the.
My daughter's first grade
Yeah,
teacher
right.
stopped by her house and sat in her car with her 2 kids just to say hey
Yeah,
to Kira. And
these-
then they're
these-
just,
Honking and they.
These principals
yeah.
are going to make this really.
I think the
so-
biggest one though is Hendersonville because we just gave them, they're going to be repointing the brick. I don't know where they're going to put it. And then there's not a queuing kind of like, North's got a pretty good parking lot. You can put a lot of cars in there. East, West, you can put quite a few cards in there, but Hendersonville, it's city
I don't know,
streets.
they have the.
They're
toughest-
on it
I
and
know
they're already
Yeah,
talking
I
to
bet
the
they
city.
are.
Everybody has it figured out.
They're already talking to
They'll
the
probably
city.
have them enter by Hendersonville Elementary.
And their
They
track
could.
is,
All the
their
way
track
down
is
there.
old, and so they're even talking about maybe
Oh,
even
yeah,
circling.
you know
for
Let's
the-
put them out that we want to do we're going to have our graduation June 5th, but we are going to celebrate our seniors when allowed by law. We will celebrate them. Is that okay?
Some way.
In some way.
And if
Yeah, don't promise it,
No,
the
don't
how.
promise.
But you
Don't-
can't say graduation. We're
No,
going to have
no,
another
no.
graduation.
No,
That's,
no,
that's
no,
kind of
no.
my point.
June
Yeah.
5th.
Is you got to have
graduation.
a celebration.
I mean, I think,
Yeah.
you know, the Jay is right, the senior class, the alumni, the administration, whatever, they will figure out if they want to celebrate.
I'd really like to not see this go through the next school year, though.
No, no.
None of it's our sponsored. So, I mean, if they
Our
decide,
sponsored
right,
stuff,
if they
not,
decide to have a big reunion at homecoming.
They can do whatever they want.
Let's do graduation on June 5th, either their plan is in place or something you come up with. It'll
Well, no,
be,
it's not I'm going to come up with, it's
Oh.
what's allowed to do.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not going rogue
That
on
is
this,
the
Coach
key,
Wood.
right?
I'm not going
That's the
rogue.
catch is what
what
the law allows us to do, what
Right.
the health department allows.
What the law is going to allow us to do, that we will do it on June.
Does any, do you have any other general operations? I'm
General
sorry.
operations, I've never I know you've been here a long time, I've never been more proud, ever. I know I end every meeting by, it's my honor and pleasure to serve, but I can say that more proudly now, that I'm truly honored to serve this group that's behind me and every staff member that we have, because they have been truly heroes. I saw that there was a lunchroom hero week.
Yeah,
And you
that
know,
was
that,
cool.
that our child nutrition department, they're all heroes.
Mhm.
And everybody right now who's working with our school system and the parents. I mean, we got to remember, a great shout out, because there's been a lot, as Mr. Craven has said, when he's doing his homeschool and Ms. Holt's doing her homeschool. It's this, thank you parents for your patience. I mean, what else can we say? Thank you.
I
Because,
tried to see if Dot would come homeschool mine.
Yeah, come
I
on.
told you I could do history.
Yeah.
that's all. Thank you, Mr.
All right,
Craven.
I'll
Thank
take a
you.
motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second,
second.
all in favor, say aye.
Bye.
There you go. All right.